So I'd be happy.
I wouldn't care, cash in the,
I don't think I'd vote cash.
I wouldn't vote it. It's like years ago, we sold off various assets around this place, need to be sold off, you know, from council.
Right, good morning, everybody. I will call the meeting to order and we will start with our meeting. Ngā mihi o te rā ki te whānau e hui hui nei. Kia tau te rangimarie, kia whakatapua tātou me nā mea, e whakawhanau ana tātou, homi e hui e tai. And just the obligatory safety notices that there's an exit door through which many of us will have come. There's another exit door right behind us. If we hear the alarm and we're not going to go home, then we assemble out by the playground until we're asked to come back in. Now, today's meeting is a hearings meeting whereby we give people who made submissions on our annual plan the chance to come and elaborate. But there are quite a few people who wish to do that. So we're going to get underway promptly. We're going to invite Jenny Boyne to the table. Welcome, Jenny. You're very welcome here. You tell me that you're an old hand at this, so it's lovely to see you here again. So you have 10 minutes, and the sort of advice I believe we give is that if you were able to sum up just short of that, then councillors would be able to ask you questions. I think you should assume that we have read the material, and therefore the best use of your time might be to emphasise the points that you think need extra emphasis. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to listen to our concerns. We'd rather not be here, but it's important for me and my family to speak up and say enough is enough. It is not acceptable to increase our rates by 28% yet again. You've effectively condoning extortion by expecting us to pay disproportionately for the mismanagement of the district assets. Our land values have been artificially increased due to coastal subdivision, which you've embraced, and carbon forestry, of which the Crown has incentivised. However, financially, the subdivisions have been a windfall for the council coffers. An example is the RFF farm. You continue to collect the one rate from the owner of the main block, so one uniform charge. However, the 3 subdivisions on that property over the last 30 years have also allowed another 32 ratepayers. Likewise, the neighbour to the north, Hiwi, Kirikiri, has 13 ratepayers now, and their neighbour Greentops has 9 ratepayers. It's not hard to do the maths, but that's an extra 54 ratepayers all paying the uniform annual charge, as opposed to 3. The other significant subdivision is the Tiaroi south of us, where our neighbours have also have consented subdivision. There are now additional 20 ratepayers, and I'm pretty sure their land value is at market price. So please question why you think it is perfectly okay to expect us to roll over and pay 28% when you're collecting a whole lot of revenue on dead-end roads, all the while comfortable that the urban ratepayers pay only 11% increase. Paraphrase my neighbour up the road: who benefits and who pays? The library's budget is now $500,000. Are you proposing to build a new library, or is the administration of the council included in this? I might be the recent appointment of the Chief of Works and Services. Pensioner housing is a disgrace. You've got empty houses and poor maintenance, despite 2 people within the council who are managing these properties that pop around and see the view. The roading budget, it wouldn't matter if we agreed to 3, 5 or 10 million. The money would be eroded in the office and not actually maintaining or repairing the roads. Planning and efficient use of resources, machinery and labour does make a difference. Meeting targets and ticking boxes is a worthless exercise if you don't pay attention to detail. We feel the council's culture over the last few years has waited until the roads have almost collapsed before you initiate repairs, when a simple fix at the time would have cost very little. Please don't blame the forestry trucks for the state of our local roads. These trucks drive several Ks on private roads and they're not crumbling. They're built and maintained so they remain open and operational, and more importantly, safe for their drivers. The same cannot be said for the management of our roads. There doesn't seem to be any prudent planning for us on the outside of roadworks. Examples of when we see a digger coming out and then returning only for it to come out 1 or 2 days later to complete another job less than 200 metres down the road. This is unproductive and wasteful. It has nothing to do with adverse weather. It is more often than not just maintenance. So we see it vital to overhaul how you manage the roading network, starting with a list of what's broken, blocked or missing. It's there in the book. It is also just as frustrating to your contractors as it is to us when we hear that it's not on the list. So sorry, we can't fix that as we won't get paid. These are not new jobs. These are the ones that have been recorded for 2 or 3 years or more and ignored until they're so destroyed that it costs thousands to remedy. We're in deflationary times. We've had to make lots of cuts to our business, and that includes staffing and contractors. So I would appreciate you looking to do the same. Look at your budgets, number of staff in the council offices. You now have to manage those budgets and tick boxes and ask yourself what's essential and are we getting the best service for our money? The culture of managers managing managers has to cease, or job descriptions must change to ensure those responsible for their departments are spending as if it were their own money. Any overruns or shortfalls come from with their own budgets or pockets, not ours. They must be made accountable for their actions or inactions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. That was very crisply presented. So there might be quite a lot of time for questions. You don't have to answer them either way, but if it's something you feel worth commenting on. And who wants to go first, please, councillors? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Jenny, certainly a lot of points you raised were covered when we came out to the Tuchamuri meeting.
Yes.
And the councillors that attended that meeting and the staff certainly received the message, and thanks for coming in and sharing those concerns with the wider council table today, so that we all collectively have heard those messages. Going back to your submission, you didn't where you would like the Rural Roading Reserve to be funded that. And I know you said it doesn't matter whether it's $10 million, but what figure would be your preference?
That lower figure that you've come up with. I mean, you guys have got people that actually should, well, I'm assuming, because you employ the best people you possibly can get. We all do that. They've come up with that 300,000, didn't they?
That's what it's currently been for the last few years.
Yeah.
Since it was initiated.
Yeah. Well, we'll just have to look at those things. The my other thing was, I mean, I know Mr. Woodcock there, said, Councillor Woodcock has said that most of the money now is like 45% is going on Lollipop Man. So can we just be a bit more inventive maybe and turn around and make us all go and do a lollipop course, so then we can have a bit of in-house lollipopping instead of, because it's $400 to do the lollipop course. And how much does it cost a day for you guys to pay for a lollipop person? So it can be a community. I mean, I know it sounds, it might be a nightmare for the council to organise, but surely you can have some casual staff. And I'm sure if you get like half a dozen on our road and half a dozen down the other roads to put our hands up, go on a course, and it'll be funded by somebody else anyway. Rural communities, whatever will fund it. And so therefore you can have your own traffic management. I mean, it might just be not shit here, but it's just thinking outside the box. If we can reduce that 45% cost of actually fixing the road for traffic management, or even close the road, even close the damn road while you're fixing it, and you've got better use of your money.
Thanks, Jenny.
Councillor Olds.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks very much for coming in and presenting. Just listening to that commentary and your conversation with Councillor Elms at the moment, I just wonder whether you'd be a supporter of perhaps bringing some services back in-house again for council to manage.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jenny. I appreciate it.
Councillor Woodcock.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Jenny, thanks for coming along. Always a pleasure. It's funny how you talk about the lollipop thing there. It's quite good. And Colin just asked a really good question, because I'm an advocate for bringing a certain amount of services either back us or into small contractors might do those small jobs and bits and pieces, that general maintenance to get it back. So it's really good to hear that. Yeah, I think that's quite a good idea. Yeah.
Like to see if we can reduce that. It's one way of getting to, well, from the outside perspective, and it probably is the same with poor old Mr. His name is the head of roading. His budget is all spent on stuff that, okay, it's necessary because you Waka Kotoki won't give you money, but everybody else, you got to tick boxes. We've all got to have a health and safety plan, but honestly, close the road.
Yeah.
It's cheaper to close the road and only open at lunchtime when they're having smoke out.
Yeah.
I'm sure that we all survive Rimatukas. We all get there by 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
So people can get to places. Yeah.
It's good to hear. Yeah. No, thanks, Rick.
Right, I don't see anyone else. So look, thank you very much, Jenny. That was very, very interesting. And as Councillor Elam said, we have taken many of your messages on board, and you can look to see things change over time. But one of the things we all know is that in local government, change can be quite slow, but we will do our best.
That's right. Now I'm going to give you some time at the end. At 11:50, I think you've got Beverly Clark.
At 11:50.
He is not. I'm going to. Now. Here.
Yes, that's correct. So this is
won't be coming in.
Won't be coming in.
She just wants concerns about the pensioner housing, and if you could look and see, like, put people in pensioner housing. One of Martinboro's still empty or something. Yeah.
There's one in Greydown that seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if that can be squeezed into a budget somewhere.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
So the next person on our list has withdrawn. The third person is unable to attend. The fourth person is not here yet, so we're going to move to Michael. Michael, this is possibly a little earlier than you had anticipated, but welcome. If you'd like to come up to the. So Michael's submission is 116, probably on page 24, depending on which copy of submissions you're looking at.
Trying to find something.
Just give us a couple of seconds, Michael, so that we. Right. Thank you. Everybody with us? Excellent. Okay, Michael, your time starts whenever you're ready.
Well, I have to say thank you to everybody for coming out today. Did think there would be a few more people from our community, but that's all good. At least we get to come out and have a say, and appreciate everybody being here. Obviously there's some problems that we're addressing here with our town right now. And I think we really need to start getting a little bit more creative with how we address these problems. I think in my submission, I brought up things like the library and perhaps getting people to help out as well. Sorry, I didn't get your name.
Oh, Jenny.
Sorry?
Jenny Boyne?
Jenny? Yeah, Jenny. Jenny said something about Lollipop Man. I actually did road safety when I was working for Farm Turkey. So I think these are definitely avenues that we need to go, and we need to look into and definitely take a more active role in as members of the community. The other day when I did find out about all this, and I do have to apologize, I haven't been a very active member of this community when it comes to being involved in the council, keeping up on our rates and stuff, but I started finding out about the state that we're in with the sewage system, with the increases. In 2020, our property was reevaluated. We had an increase. And then last year, we had an increase of almost 26%. And this year, we're looking, being rural, we're looking at about 29.5%. I mean, we're a single income family. We're going to get tax hikes next year, get tax hikes from the government, inflation on our gas. These are things that my family's not going to be able to afford. We're trying to build a house, Cape Palliser Road right now. Apparently that's going to end up being, instead of 100% covered by the government, we're going to have to fund that as well. That's almost 50 kilometers of road. And at the moment, we're paying 1.2 million every year for 100 kilometers. So it's another $600,000 that we have to find. And I think I speak for everybody when I say we're in the shit. We allowed ourselves to get into the shit over years. We have one of the lowest tax rates in our district, and we have one of the largest districts with the most roading. So we really need to figure out where we're going with this. I think in our submission, I said that we should have the highest increase for our sewage. I don't pay for sewage. I'm going to be out Cape Palliser. But this community is our community. So what one person has to pay, what somebody else has to take care of, we should all be in solidarity with them. You know, I want my kids to be able to come into town, be able to go to the public toilets. You know, we've made a huge deal over the last 3 years about COVID. There's not even soap dispensers in 2 of the toilets in our public toilets. We're talking about our librarians in our library to educate our youth being a luxury, is what I heard in the meeting the other day. This is unacceptable. We're a first world country. In the 5 years that I've been working in Martinborough, almost every summer, we've not been able to drink the water. Our roads are falling apart, potholes. Inakura is falling apart. Cape Palliser is falling into the ocean. So how we got here is relevant because we need to be able to address these issues and figure out where we went wrong. But moving forward, I don't think that we can put Band-Aids on it, 3.5 million on our sewage, and then have to pay more down the road, I think we need to invest in our future, invest in our children, invest in our infrastructure. And we need to find places of revenue for that to come from, as well as not just taking it from our taxpayers, our ratepayers. So we won't be able to continue this increase in this, however the government calls it, this 10%, whatever, everything nowadays. So I understand that some of us are new to the council. I'm kind of new to contributing my voice and my help. I've always tried to help my community, whether it's donating wood to the school or having cooking classes with the police or just being a good neighbor. I grew up in a place where if a man asks for help, you help them. Your neighbors are all you have. And this is rural. And I think everybody in this room shares my sentiment. Nobody in here is afraid of hard work. So it might not be our fault that we got into this place, but it's our responsibility to get ourselves out of it. Make sure that we make this a better place for our kids and everybody that follows us. And I think by doing the bare minimum, we're going to end up putting ourselves in a deeper hole. We're going to take on more debt. The thing that I'm also worried about is if we do go and upgrade all these systems, get our roads up to snuff, get our sewage up to snuff, and we get taken over by Three Waters, we're still going to be paying for all of our usage, yet have less say in how it's controlled. Now, I'm not going to admit that I know everything there is to know about Three Waters. Like I said, I'm kind of playing a little bit of catch up right now, but I think that we need to get our priorities in line here. So I would like to go and do everything right and do it now and do it the first time. I'm worried with if we do spend all this money on the sewage and infrastructure, what are we getting for it? How much debt are we taking on? And how much is it going to actually take to maintain that debt? I discussed with, who was the lady the other day that came in? It was there, and the other lady that She'll, yeah. She was saying that the way that we take care of some of our debt right now is we have a low interest rate of 2.2%. However, we pay the entirety of the interest up front, save up the money for the principal and pay off the principal entirely at the end because it's cheaper payments for us. I don't know too much about lending, But this to me doesn't sound like we're gonna get that kind of wicked offer unless it is costing us more in the long run. Pay all the interest up front continually and then still have to come up with principal at the end. So I'd like us to take stock of what we have as far as debt. Because obviously that's something that we have to service as well. And any money that we pay in interest for debt is coming off of what we can provide for our citizens and for our community. So I really would love to have a look at that. Also, like I said, there's not very many people here. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't know about and I'm playing catch up right now. And I went around and I talked to a lot of people, invited them to come. A lot of people aren't here, maybe they'll be here tomorrow. But I think having 2 meetings, both on work days, both at 9 o'clock in the morning, we need to start thinking about these things outside the box instead of just putting it into what works. We need to be able to target everybody. When I went into the office to get information about this meeting and what time it was, what I had at the moment was that. Didn't give me any dates. Like I said, I haven't been the most active in searching out this information, so I went into the office. The lady at the front showed me a pamphlet. I asked if it had been mailed out, and she said it was $1.70 to mail it out. You know, I pay over 1,000 times that every year in my rates. Now I can't get $1.70 to have a pamphlet mailed out to me. It's telling me that there's consultation on a 30% increase. It's telling me that sewage is broken down, and then we can't take any new people adding into the sewage. Now we can't take on any more ratepayers because people won't be building here. And who wants to risk it? Oh, they've been raised on their rates 2 years in a row. Now we're going to move to this community and pay more rates. We're going to drive away people coming in. We're going to drive away new business. We're going to drive away people that are already here. People are going to go broke and bankrupt and not be able to live in the communities they were born into or have fallen in love with, like myself. I'm making this my home. I want to see that it's taken care of. I want to see that everybody here is making sure that they're responsible for their actions and they're responsible for us who are paying for all of this to take place. I don't know whether I'm in the right or in the wrong with how I am. I know that I could have done better in the past. And you have my promise in the future, I'm going to do better. I'm going to try to hold you guys accountable, and I'm going to try to hold myself accountable. I'm going to try to set a good example for my poor boys.
Well, I'll just interrupt there, Michael. That's your 10 minutes. Thank you very much. Because the next person isn't here, we can extend time and we can ask some questions. The first question that I would like to ask, if you will humour me, is you mentioned at one point the sources of income. Did you have any particular thoughts in mind as to, because we would agree with that, if we could get a wider range of income sources into the council, we would be delighted. Have we missed anything, do you think?
Well, I think I'm not sure exactly the monetary amounts that you gain from things such as festivals, you know, harvest and all these different things that we bring into town. I think harvest is more of a part from the Maston council and stuff like that. But we have around the vines, we have cruise, we have all these different festivals and events that we can bring in. I was also thinking that we could do a farmer's market, utilize some of our assets a little bit better. We got Constantine Park each year, you know, we have the Santa Claus parade and things like that. I know that's not maybe something that we can monetize at the moment, but I think we need to start looking at bringing events through. My understanding as well is that we own some farms or we lease out the golf club in Greytown, is that correct? Yeah. So what is that an asset to us at the moment? Is that gaining us money? We lease it out or something at the moment?
well, we think it pays an income.
Yeah,
And I mean, your comment was about more sources of income.
yeah.
So I was just interested whether you'd maybe thought, I mean, having a fair in the square probably isn't going to generate a lot of income in a way that would cause us to reduce rates, for example.
Yeah.
Anyway, Councillor Olds has a question.
Oh, sorry, can I
That's all right.
address that really quickly first? Yeah, I know having a fair in town is not maybe gonna increase rates, but there are also other knock-on benefits to it as well.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, if you're doing a farmer's market and you're able to attract 100 stall makers, not only are you taking, say, if you take $25 off them, and there's more than enough space for a farmer's market in Constantine Park once a week. If you do that over the year, it does add up quite quickly. $2,500 every week. You times that by 52 weeks every year, plus the added benefit to the community of getting cheaper produce as well as being able to mingle, being able to trade ideas as well as produce, taking care of each other, building on that as well. People can build small businesses and involve revenue into their own lives, not as well just bringing in revenue for the council. I'm not talking about lowering rates. Obviously, there are people that are going to be hardly affected by that. I'm rather good at managing my money, and we're comfortable as we need to. And that's why we're allowed to be able to be a one income family. We work very, very hard.
Councillor Olds did have a question.
No, thanks, Michael. I've got a couple of questions. One is that just a point of clarification, you're suggesting the council actually run these events rather than the current operators who are running these events?
So who are the current operators that run the event?
Various groups and organisations that run these events, such as Round Vines, etc., and the Martinborough Fair.
Yeah.
You're suggesting that council pick up the running and organising of these events. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I'm saying that if there are events like that, and like I said, I don't know the specific financials of it. I believe if this town is putting on an event, we should definitely see some revenue come back from it. Not just the revenue going to the businesses, but revenue coming to the town as well for setting it up. And if we do have to pay for outside event planners, to put it together, obviously there's things like health and safety, police that need to come out for check stops, things of that nature, porta potties.
Yep, thanks. You've pretty much covered that first question. The second one is in your submission, you're suggesting volunteers for our libraries.
Yeah, absolutely.
How would you propose to see that working?
Well, we could either bring in people and train them up as well under the current staff. My understanding is that you guys are short on days, and certain days we have to close, or days where people will be sick so that we don't have the coverage as well for them. So, I mean, I'll be more than happy to help out in the library. I understand that there's some training that needs to be involved, but I think that if we say to our community, we can either start shutting down on certain days, or people can volunteer their time. I'm sure there's lots of people around town that would love to help out and volunteer time. And like I said, there's training that needs to go into that. And like Ginny said as well, you know, with Lollipop Men, but I already have a certification for that. If you put your feelers out into the community and we engage, we'll be able to find those people to help out. If you need somebody to drop off flyers and help notify people about, you know, community boards and public consents and different things like that, I'm more than happy to go door to door. You know, we say $1.70 to drop off as mail. When I was a child, we used to do it.
I think you've answered Councillor Old's question, and we have a councillor online who's also got a question. So, Councillor Maynard, would you like to talk to us, please?
Hi, sorry. I'd love to be there, Michael, and I just want to say thank you for coming in. I'm quite interested in what you've come to the table with, and the fact that you've actually brought some ideas to help. Giving it with your volunteers in the library. But not just in the library, in different ways. So your thoughts are that perhaps the council needs to be more proactive in reaching out to see what skills there are within our community. Like you say, you have a lollipop license. I don't know if that's the right word. But things like that. So maybe being a bit more proactive to see, because we may have some retired librarians in the community, things like that, to perhaps be looking at reaching out. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I believe, Mr. Mayor, you have a program that's about getting jobs and things like that for
Younger people, yes.
younger people as well. I think, it's something that we could also incorporate into some of our older students, the year 12 and 13 students.
We do.
Of where they go and do an internship at the library, then they're also getting life experience and training. As well as I understand that the turning the paper into the digital has been suspended for a little bit so that we can cut costs. I think in the same way, we can probably bring interns in, whether it's through post-secondary education, whether they're in university or whether in their last few years of school. And I think that's something that's, an older student would be capable of doing, and whether we pay them a smaller amount, whether it's a minimum wage or whether they work for credits and things of that nature towards their education. I think it's a good way to engage young people into moving into, a job sector and getting actual work experience. So
look, thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you, Michael, for that response. I think you've raised some really interesting points, and one thing that we are always on the lookout and we are aware of is the engagement of our youth with local government. So that's certainly something for everybody to think about. So much appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor Woodcock.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Michael, for coming along. Great to hear your passion, mate. Awesome. Just to mention on what you just said about work experience and that with college kids gaining credits, the way Kuranui College actually do their what they call the Ignite program, and that sort of thing actually may work for them. So it could be a place of discussion down the track to see if somehow that can help out. It's great thoughts. Cheers.
I know they're all kind of small things, a farmer's market, volunteers. But every dollar that we save here is a dollar that we don't have to borrow from the bank, which is extra dollars that we don't have to pay in interest and can put back into our community.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you for your submission. Thank you for coming along. As it happens, I too advocate for volunteers in the library. It's very common in cultural institutions right throughout the world to have volunteers. If you go to Te Papa, probably the first person you will meet is a volunteer. You go to New Palmerston North Hospital, not a cultural institution, but the first person who will greet you and help you get to the right place is a volunteer. So this is not necessarily a new idea, but I think you're making the point that in a region like ours, very widespread, not many people, we have to use the willing skills that people bring to the council to help get the job done. And a comment you made just at the beginning of that you're here to make suggestions for the long-term benefit of the district. Can I assure you that everybody sitting at the table shares that goal? And now that you've developed a newfound interest in local government, maybe we'll see you again sometime. Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael.
We need to be fair to all the committees. I mean, extra time, so we're still waiting.
Because there was no.
Yes, but then that's unfair on others. Don't have the time to.
I agree with that, but we are going to keep to time. Everyone knows they've got. Excuse me, are you Xavier? No?
No.
Okay. Right. Well, I think this is the point in the lesson where the teacher says, talk amongst yourselves.
I believe Andrea and Narita are here. I'll just,
Oh, okay.
yeah, just text them. There's no, still no say.
Right. Okay. So who's excluding minutes?
His name Andy, but he's not listed. I don't know if he was just coming
Right,
to
just
observe.
coming. Might have been. He might be a friend of
So,
mine.
so Andrea and Rita, I'm on.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I couldn't tell what.
Very standing.
Yeah, so Amanda's just gone together.
I've asked my question, I'm just trying to find out.
Okay, thank you.
That's 7,000.
Floated around yesterday.
I have asked, I got off the top of my head, but yeah, last show, let's get back.
Yeah.
We had 70 stormwater in
Points of clarity. Right, tēnā kōrua, haere mai ki te hui o te rā. Andrea Narita, you're always welcome at the council table, as I hope you understand, and you're particularly welcome today because you have both put in a submission and now you've come to talk to it. I think you should take it as understood that people have read the submission, and potentially the best use of your 10 minutes is to emphasise the things you really want to hit home. The floor is yours.
Whakarongo ake au ki te tangi o te manu. Āki mā tui ai ronga, tui ai raro, tui ai roto, tui ai waho. Ka rongo te pō, ka rongo te ao. Pū taka pua, fio. Tua ki te here tangata I tākia mai, Waikinui, Waikiro I Hawaii Pāmama, I te hono I Wairua. I start off with this whakatauki. It is saying, listen. I listen to the call of the bird, the tui, calling, let us be united. Link us above, below, inside, outside, link us to our humanity. Let the world of night hear, let the world of day hear. Let us to the human lineage, origins of great Hawaii, long Hawaii, distant Hawaii, where our souls rejoin. E tuaki o, kei te mihi ki a koutou, ko tai mai, ngā puari o South Wairarapa District Council, ko Andrea Rutini, taku ingoa, heuri o Ngāti Kahunanu, me rangitani o Wairarapa hoki. I am Andrea Rutini, and I've started off with this whakatauki because that is the intent that we present our submission to you. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
So, ko Narita Hooper tōku ingoa, no Paitu Mōkaya hau. My name is Narita Hooper. I'm Māori Standing Committee and the voice for Kids Paitu. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for reading our submission. So our submission, some councillors may be familiar with this, is the submission that we put to the long-term plan in the previous long-term plan. One of the things we wanted to revisit and have reconsidered is about the urupa. So we have 3 urupa in South Wairarapa, Kohinui, Papawai and Whakatomotomo. So on the way out to Lake Wiri. And of the 3 urupa, what we feel is for yourselves to go to your own cemeteries in Pearson, Greytown and Martuborough and to visit your loved ones that have passed, and to actually arrive at your cemeteries in nice trimmed edges and fencings mended and mowed and trimmed. But for us at our urupa, because they're so displaced as well, 50 years ago, whānau surrounded our urupa. Whānau had marae and buddy close to urupa and we're able to service them, but that's not our situation today. We're very displaced from our marae, therefore our urupa suffer. One urupa had a member from Mana Whenua who said the one at Whakatomotomo is one that's very dear to her heart. Her whānau are buried there, and a cousin has been doing that cemetery for the last 15 years at his own resourcing and own expense, and he's about to move to Carterton. He's quite a bit older now, and so that cemetery in particular is going to go into disrepair because it is more isolated than the other two. So just to add that to that part. Other things we wanted to talk about when we brought these up in the long-term plan is a dual narrative being spoken and being shown and displayed on the whenua in each of our towns. You know, when we spoke to the long-term plan a few years ago, we talked about entering Wairarapa. You wouldn't know that there's a whole lot of community. You wouldn't know the history. It's not there. It's not something you can see or feel in the towns of Featherston, Greytown and Martin. And so for those reasons, we asked about having po erected, about council building relationship with marae and hapu, to have something that speaks into a dual narrative of the history of South Wairarapa. And just wondering, you know, not wondering, but considering that, you know, it might be timely that these are considered again, the items 2 and items 3, because we're in the wellbeing fund at the moment, and Featherston is part of it and having master plan. So now is the opportunity for these 2 items to be considered at that point. And the last one, item 4, was really around, again, it's about how do we show dual narrative? How do we Māori reaffirm themselves on the whenua that belongs to them? And some of that is in design and architecture. So where possible, another consideration we made that any civic buildings of council, any renovations that are being done, if some consideration come toward the Māori Standing Committee, where they may be able to put you in contact with a whānau member that does carving or design or something like that, just so we can have an opportunity to show the mana whenua and the history of this area. Yeah, kia ora.
Kia ora, Narita. Now, Andrea.
To pick up also on the return soldiers, point number 3, you know, that poo is dear to our heart, and it is with we're wanting to put a tono out to the council around really thinking about what partnership looks like. And these are the opportunities that we present to you to really try that on. And that's what my whakatauki was. In closing, you know, there's also another one that I'd like to say, Nāku te roro, no te roro, ka ora ai te iwi. So with your resources and our resources, our community can thrive. And so that is the intent that we come before you today.
Thank you very much. Now we'll start with Councillor Oles. He was first, then Councillor Grimmer, then Councillor. Gosh, I think we'll just go around the room.
Thanks very much for presenting today. It's wonderful to see you here. You raised a couple of things. One is the po for each town, and I understand that Featherston had one under construction that was funded by Fab Feathy. And I guess that I haven't been updated on where that sits at the moment. I know that there was some controversy around some of the engraving. So I guess in saying that, you know, I totally agree that that sort of thing needs to be erected. Also Featherston and Martinborough to recognise that heritage that makes up our community. And the second comment I'll make is and this is probably not a question, but I'm not sure if you're aware that we've been working with Dick Smith, or I have been working with Dick Smith for a plaque and a memorial of some description with the 28th Maori Battalion in Featherston. So we're making good progress there, and Dick has had the design work done. It's just a case of attracting a little bit of funding to the tune of $7,000. So that's work in progress. So just in case you weren't aware.
Of course, your Māori Standing Committee has funding towards. You know, we have grants that are available, so maybe
right.
We'll
make an application. Thank you.
So because so many people do want to ask questions, we will go around the room. Councillor Maynard, if you can hear us, we will get to you in a wee while, but not too far away. Councillor Sadlerfoot.
Yeah. Thank you so much to both of you for being here. My question was just around the urupa and sort of the level of support that you would like from council for that. So is that sort of at a basic sort of lawn mowing and weeding level, or is there perhaps more extended maintenance? You mentioned that some of our cemeteries have fencing and nice gates and things. So is which level initially at least are you looking that you'd like some support for that at?
Initially, it would be weed trimming and lawn mowing.
And at all three, or is there one and
Well, we know that Kohanui have got a program where the whānau are coming every month, putting their names against the month over their 12-month period and going in to do the maintenance there, which is great. That's been picked up in the last year. I know that Papua do have whānau that do go down and maintain theirs sometimes. But Tuatonga seems to be the one that is most isolated, and mostly because there isn't a marae around there anymore. There's no more whānau close by to do it, and just really sort of concerned about that one falling into disrepair.
thank you.
Councillor Gray.
Kia ora. I don't really have any questions, but just thank you very much for coming in to talk to us. I thought it was beautifully presented and absolutely support everything you have to say.
Councillor Wood.
Hey, kia ora. Thanks for coming. Good to hear. So my personal links are to Popeye. So with the Wairarapa, my father-in-law's got the orchard next door. So I know he used to do the mowing and that for it. I don't know a bit around the Wairarapa and that because his houses are next door. Pretty sure at some stage it was asked at community board, ABOS about getting the council to, and we were told that council didn't own the land, so they couldn't do it. I would actually like to see that go to council and actually see if there is something that can be helped in a way. There also are like community board grants. If you'd want little things done, you could possibly, I know they're not big grants, but they might help out in a little bit of broken fence or, things like that. But just great to come and put your concerns across and get it in our eyes. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Councillor Maynard.
Kia ora, kia ora. Kia ora te whānau, lovely to see you. I just wanted to raise a couple of things. So the request for the Wairarapa has been on the council's radar for some time. As they say, they presented it at the long-term plan as well, but it had been raised, I believe, even when Reihania was chair. And I think something that needs to be kept firmly in all of our minds is that we are one community, and that this shouldn't be about, this is another cemetery within our area, that although the council doesn't own it as such, maintenance and just being able to the upkeep for the people within that area, for our whānau, for mana whenua is really important, because we can't say out of one side of our mouth that we all just want to be one area, and in the other keep putting up roadblocks on why things can't be done. That has to stop at some stage. With regards to the PO going up and the funding, and again, this came up in the long-term plan, so this isn't new, and we're still waiting on some traction. The Māori Standing Committee is another board on the council, so it shouldn't have to go to the community board, it shouldn't have to go anywhere else to be asking this. It comes to the table to let the council know what its needs are. And so with regards to the PO, looking at the first year for the $10,000 to go towards it, I think, this is how we're needing to be looking at it, folks, not like, because we shouldn't be asking for handouts. This is what we need to keep doing the mahi that's needed for council. And that's all I really want to say. And I congratulate you both. That was a fantastic presentation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bosley.
Thank you. For great presentation. Councillor said before to come to ask my question, reinforced by Lee. Is there no record? No, there's no memorial law to all Māori soldiers anywhere. Is that right? Just there's no feature.
There is in the
Papawai. I'm going to talk about that
There's
shortly.
nothing there.
Nothing in it.
Nothing across the district. though.
Sorry, that's, I got my voice to get to this. Reality of this group that needs to recognise rather than. Due to.
And I am aware that in Pirino and report.
I think that's it.
There is something there too, in writing, but that's not, you know, don't want to be limited to that, we're talking more about something tangible.
Yeah, sure.
It almost goes side by side to some of the senators.
Yep.
Yeah.
Something.
And I also want to draw council, sorry. No, thanks, but.
And we are aware of the work that Dick Smith has been doing, but it's been a long time, you know, far too long.
It's just funding, I guess, that's holding us up now, that's all. Yeah.
Councillor Elams,
Thanks,
you have a,
Sorry.
if you have a question.
Thanks for your presentation this morning and your feeling and your thoughts and your submissions. I think there's a lot there that for us to consider around the table and to ask questions from our officers as to how some of these your requests can perhaps proceed. Certainly in the last 3 years while I was on the Martinborough Community Board, there was a suggestion and a desire, I think, to have a memorial for local fallen soldiers to be placed here in the Memorial Square in the centre of town. I'm sorry, I can't recall why that has not progressed, but it's certainly something that I think we need to revisit and progress going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Thank you for coming in. Nerida, the Wairarapa, and correct me if I'm wrong, but last year was the year before it went out on consultation document to do it, and it was approved. I'm sure it was approved and was supposed to be added to the maintenance schedule. That's right, isn't it? I'm sure. I'm sure it was. So, Paul, could you check that, please?
Came about.
It was because it wasn't. It's not a big expense. Yeah, and that's my point. If it hasn't happened, we need to know why. But I'm sure we actually approved it. And I'm sure there's people sitting behind you that probably know that as well. I'm sure we did, didn't we, Warren? I'm sure that a reply was raised last year in the annual plan. Because I know it went out on one of the consultation documents about it as well. The fallen soldiers, great, as you probably both aware, Greytown is looking at a new memorial for fallen soldiers, and I'm sure that the organisers of the RSA have spoken to Papawai about incorporating the names of the fallen soldiers from Papawai onto that new memorial. If not, probably get hold of the RSA because they are they're about to start fundraising for it. So the designs are all done to go into Memorial Park. And certainly the conversations I've had with them was to include all the soldiers from the district, the greater Greytown area on that memorial. So
And Papua played a large part in that.
Papawai has been consulted on it, I'm sure they have, yeah, and there's some but if you talk to the RSA, they've got the designs there and all the pictures and how they're going to do it. So it is in train.
That's fabulous, because what it means is that what we brought to the long-term plan 3 years ago is on the radar. That's really the best part.
Yeah.
We just thought, touch those again, because I don't know that they've actually come to.
No, keep raising them because if they haven't been done, we need to make sure they have been done. So, but certainly, I can find out who the chair of the RSA is if you want to talk to them as well.
Well, thank you both for coming in. Your submissions, I think, are both very reasonable and very temperate, and we will consider them seriously. Napihi kia kora. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kia ora.
Is Tina Day here? I don't think I see her. No. But yes, but I do see Robin Ramsden. Robin, it's a little earlier than you might have anticipated, but are you able to come and talk to us now?
Okay.
So thank you very much. Now, Robin's submission is on 35 or thereabouts.
99 is.
I apologise for the repetition.
Submission 99. Now, I think you should assume that councillors have read your submission. And therefore you might wish to use your 10 minutes to emphasise the points you wish councillors to focus on.
Oh, do we get 10?
Yours.
Oh, I prepared 5. Oh, well. Gives us lots of time to question, but the end.
I've got stuff to do today. Important updates come out and I've got to go back. So I know that my submission is very brief. The last month, May has been so busy, so I've done everything halfway because I've been so busy. So anyway, so I just want to remind you that the Local Government Act provides local authorities to play a broad role in promoting social, economic, environmental and cultural well-being of the communities, making a sustainable development approach. So every decision you make as a council must have a climate change lens on it. That's where we are at the moment. Meaning any activity, will this activity add to your emissions? If this will, is there another way to do it? And if it doesn't, that's great, keep going. So I'm not going to talk about the water or the other one. So community and youth grants are important to our communities. So please don't forget those. But please make sure that you use a climate change lens when deciding on those. But there are so many of our communities who do great things for the environment. So that'd be great. So I do have a change in I just recently had the access to the amount that you spent last year, and then have reconsidered my stance and agree that 170,000 is a suitable number. But please make it equitable across towns, because I know that's really in the towns. I specifically wanted to talk about the libraries. So we do need the libraries open. I spent March and April in the libraries on census, and they were constant all the time because I was there from opening until closing, and I had lots of time to observe. And oh my gosh, so it's just so many people coming out, books coming in and out, libraries do. School students come in with teachers, so all of the schools come in with classes every day. Toddlers come in with their grown-ups, come in, they choose books, they have sessions that are put on by the librarians. Love that our young people are learning to like libraries. People come in using the printers because often people don't have printers, and the library is the only place they can get this done. People come in using the computers again because some of our people don't have computers, and this is the only location they can have access. And reading newspapers, there's about 5 or 6 newspapers they all have access to. And the librarians are amazing because they're not just librarians who manage books. They're solving technical problems with printing, helping people with online forms, navigate banking, and when I wasn't there, navigating census. And it's just the depth and the breadth that the librarians have to manage is amazing. I mean, the library's open all the time. I mean, I'd have it all weekend if there was money. Anyway, so this is a place for people to seek knowledge and help issues. Access to accurate information is a vital resource and critical thinking skills that libraries and our librarians foster is essential for our communities. So please make sure that they stay open. Really, that's all I needed to talk about. So,
Thank you, Robin. We always appreciate people who can get to their main points swiftly and emphasise them. We'll do what we did the last time. We'll go around the room. This time we'll start with Councillor Maynard if she wishes to ask a question.
Thanks. No, Robin. I think thank you just so much for actually coming out and for showing up and for presenting. It's really appreciated. All of your input is, and just making sure that awareness of climate change is still in front of everyone's minds. So I really appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you.
And we'll sort of carry on if Councillor Bosley wishes.
Thank you. No, thank you for the presentation.
Councillor Elam's.
Thanks, Mayor Martin. Robin, you've said that you are keen for the libraries to stay open, for council to fund an extra 165,000 for those extra casual staff.
Yeah.
If council is unable to fund or makes a decision not to fund that 165,000 within the Featherston community, are you aware of people who could and would be prepared to help and volunteer to ensure the library would be able to stay open?
When I was in the library, there was a situation where one of the librarians couldn't come in. Something happened and she couldn't come in. And because I was there with census and, you know, government department, and I had what's called a stay safe button on me, which is an emergency alert, I was able to remain with the librarians and keep the library open. But at that point that I wasn't able to do that, and the council and the staff haven't agreed to do that, the library would have shut for the day. And so all those people that came in during that day, including 2 people that I helped because I have library experience as well, would never come in.
I think it would be useful if you answered the actual question.
Sorry. So I think, sorry, I'm cold.
Well, I think obviously in your case, you were able to step up and help and volunteer.
Yeah.
But are you aware of others within your community who could?
I'm sure there would be. I would be concerned about how you would do that from a legal standpoint if someone is not employed. There'd have to be some sort of way that volunteers are protected through liabilities and insurance as a staff member is when they're working. So there's that to think about as well. Because I'd hate for an incident to be, and I mean, there have been violent incidences at libraries, we know that. And I'd hate for a volunteer to be at the other end of that. And because that would lie then, that meant you wouldn't be able to do that anymore because volunteers wouldn't come in if they were attacked by members of the public. So be cautious about using volunteers in a way that you already pay people for.
Councillor Plymouth.
Yeah, thank you. Robin, thanks. I'm interested in your submission and you've recommended the increase in the water budget to 7.49.
Yep.
Are you aware of the implications of that on rates? We do that?
Yes, I have.
Would you like to make a comment about why you've said that?
Several years ago, my husband made the observation that we will have wars over water. Water is the most important resource we have in this country. People are already selling it overseas. We need to make sure that our water is kept safe, so it's drinkable. We need to make sure that our wastewater is treated in the right way and sent to the right place. And we need the money to do that, because if we don't do it properly, we will end up with water contaminating, fecal water contaminating land. We'll end up with stormwater running into houses, as we have done recently. In the last few years, we've had stormwater issues where people's houses have been flooded. So there are huge issues still to deal with water, and we need to actually be dealing with them and not just going, oh, we can't spend the money. One of the most important things we have to be dealing with.
Again, I think Councillor Plymouth's question was aimed at, are you aware what that would do to the average person's rates?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but I did.
That's my question.
I did look at it, and it's going to go up a lot, but water's really important.
And your neighbours would be happy to pay that, do you think?
I think some of the neighbours would be able to, but not all of them. I understand it's a stretch for a lot of people. But also, what do we do with people who don't want the rates to go up, but then get flooded because we haven't been able to manage the water properly?
Councillor
it's a right, you have to choose one, right? Are we going to let people's houses flood because we can't put the rates up to pay for the water to go in the right places? Right?
Thank you, Rob. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin, for presenting today. And I've just touch back on the library hours in particular and your support of the additional staff. Our libraries in Featherston and Greytown are a little more than libraries in terms of a service centre for council and dog registrations. If, for instance, to reduce the hours of that, do you see an inconvenience for our community, or would they just work around those hours to pay their rates and to pay their dog registrations and to?
If you had to drop hours for the library, don't do it on the weekend, because I know that there are a lot of people who can't pay for their dogs or their rates during the week because they work all day, and so the weekend is Saturday morning is the only time they can get to the library. And if you shut the libraries on Saturday mornings, now you have a whole raft of people who can't get to the library anymore because it's the only day they can go.
So that would be an inconvenience, so to speak.
I think it would be, yeah.
That was the key.
Especially if it was a Saturday.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob.
Councillor
No, I've got no further questions, Robin. Just thank you for being here.
Yeah, so just a couple of things. Just want to, I guess, echo back the importance of having a climate change lens on everything and to wave the flag of the climate change committee again, which you've presented to, which has been great. The other thing is when you talk about the libraries, and the libraries, there's been a lot of talk about that we could get library volunteerism to help support the library service. Personally, I think saying that we can replace librarians with volunteers is borderline offensive to librarians and kind of undervalues their position a little bit. Is that something that you would?
I would agree with that, yeah.
Cool. And then the only other thing was again to say, if we go for these, say yes to all the things that you're suggesting, that it would be a really big rates increase, and if you're aware of that. And
I was aware. I was trying to do the math yesterday. Water is so important, and making sure that there's valid information out there is really important. I hadn't realised how much money was spent last year on grants, community grants. It was almost twice as much as you're proposing this year. So I think that's a ratcheting back. So that's great. And what's the fourth one? I can't remember. Oh, sorry, I'm free from cold. So.
Councillor Wood.
It's and I know it's a lot. And inflation's played a big part in this one as well, because it's going up for everybody. And everyone's doing it tough. And I know that everyone's doing it tough, and so are we. But there's things that we can't do without. So.
Councillor Woodcock.
Thanks for coming along, Robin. Aidan sort of asked the question I was going to ask.
Thank you. Right, thank you, Robin. And we look forward to seeing you again at some point. So the next person on the list is Tina Day. Tina.
I know, you can't read it.
Would you like to come forward? And would you like to bring Alex with you?
Look at the place.
Greetings, welcome Tina, welcome Alex. Now just to make sure we're on page 31 of the submissions page, it's submission number 75, and the advice that I've given to others is please assume that the councillors have read it and take your 10 minutes to emphasise the points you most wish to emphasise. It's over to you though.
Good morning, Your Worship and councillors. I'm not sure what you've read. It was a very brief submission I put in online. So I'm just going to briefly summarise what we've got here and leave you with a copy of everything. I'm here today representing the Cape Palliser Residents and Ratepayers Association, and our submission is to urge you strongly, the South River District Council, to advocate on our behalf with Waka Kotahi NZTAA for a continuation of our special purpose status on the Cape Palliser Road and a continuation of the 100% funding on the whole length of the road from the Lake Ferry turn-off to the lighthouse. So some of you at the meeting we held on the 19th of May, and there was a fair representation there of Waka Kotahi and councillors and the Kawa Trust. A lot of people attended and they really appreciated the chance to talk to people face to face. And the purpose of that meeting was to oppose the loss of the special purpose status and the loss of our funding. It is quite clear to us the South Wairarapa District Council will be able to maintain this road at 51% funding, and that it is critical for this particular special purpose road. We were given this status in 1997, and that was due to high tourism and a low rating base. The rating base remains practically unchanged. The tourism has increased exponentially. It accounts for 85% of traffic on the road. It benefits greatly to the Wairarapa towns, not to us, because there's really not much to zip zap out there. So it increases the revenue in the towns. We're easily in the top 10 things to do in the North Island and for overseas tourists and New Zealanders alike. There is a multi-million-dollar crayfish industry, a multi-million-dollar power industry, a multi-million-dollar farming industry. You understand they don't all get the multi-millions, but it is added to our local, our national and our international economy. Apparently, last year, our road, approximately 36 kilometres, cost $500,000 of maintenance and $800,000 of emergency work. The year before, it was 515 of maintenance and 223 of emergency work. Much of the maintenance is not being done in a timely manner or correctly, so it leads to emergency repairs. The road is being used daily by locals, many of them essential workers, and children travel this road to the Piranha school. They have a basic right to access their homes, their food, their jobs, their medical care, emergency services, their lands of significance, and recreational activities. The whole coastline is of huge historical and cultural significance to Māori. There are 3 iwi out there. It is one of the earliest settled in New Zealand, and the iwi are in agreement with us. The Cape Palliser Coast, as far as the stone wall, has also been given special status by the New Zealand Historic Places Trust and has been registered as an historic area, and this was achieved by Foss Leach. Most countries would rank access to their coastline and borders as the highest priority, particularly in these times of unrest. Access to this remote area is vital, with high tourism, fishing and physical pursuits, meaning when an accident happens, it's usually bad. There could be a natural event or an environmental disaster. And in a sizable event or multiple injuries, we need a resilient road to help people or mitigate effects. We are currently trialling eco reefs with amazing results. At a minimum cost, we estimate 12 million. The most vulnerable areas of this road could be stabilised. The government recently announced $1 billion package to improve the whole of the country's transport network. If the money was granted by the government, it would need to be earmarked and ring-fenced by South Wairarapa District Council for use only on this project, and construction to be done under the supervision of the inventor of this technology, Fred Waker. I've written to the chairman of Waka Kotahi, and I've requested 12 million. And I requested that he leaves 100% funding and our special purpose status in place. And I think if that was completed, you would find that the money required to maintain this road would drop drastically. We will continue to lobby for a reversal of this funding decision and look to combine with the other 12 councils who have also got special purpose roads around New Zealand. We'll be initiating much closer contact with the South Wairarapa District Council and Waka Kotahi. I have attached statements from people in here, but there's also a written statement from Kieran McAnulty, a recent one, who's strongly supporting us in our case to Michael Woods. And I see he's actually the acting Transport Minister at the moment. If I had a direct phone, I would give it to Kieran. But he supports us. I don't know if that counts for anything because it's on a Waka Kotahi level. Waka Kotahi's Road to Zero prioritises road safety solutions, and people will die on this road if maintenance dropped to any lower standard than we currently have.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nina. Alex, do you wish to add?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm also a committee member of the Cape Palliser Residents and Ratepayers Association. So I think our submission here today is for you to ensure that within the annual plan, you have sufficient time and funding available to investigate some of the options, as opposed to, I'm fully aware of the constraints, time constraints and money constraints of council with regards to this. However, there are a couple of things that must be done with urgency. One is to finalise the Eco Reef trial and work with Waka Kotahi to ensure that it is extended as opposed to it being removed in 2024 when the consent lapses. The other one is that you have capacity to lobby other councils who have special purpose roads, local government New Zealand, and also lobby the board of Waka Kotahi to reverse their 2015 decision by Jeff Dangerfield, which actually reduces these special purpose roads. So all this takes time and money, and we would like to see a notation of that in the annual plan to allow this to happen, which will save ratepayers millions over the long term.
Thank you very much. What we'll do is we'll go the other way. This time we'll start here. Councillor Whitcomb.
Thanks, Tina and Alex. Thanks, Chair. Very good points you make there, Alex. That is quite a vital thing that should be done. or as Tina knows, I went out to the meeting at Narwee. I'm fully supportive of keeping that 100% funding. I think it probably should have been pushed a bit harder a few years ago.
Not sure where it was.
But when it's sort of 5 years ago or whatever, when it come up, maybe it should have been pushed there, and I hope we haven't left the run too late.
Ray?
Yeah, not a lot to say, except that we had a presentation by, is it Tim Nash?
Yes.
Not that long ago about the rising sea levels and the damage that does to coastal roads. And one of the slides that he put up was of this eco reef and how good and effective it is. So I think if there's a way that we can support the extension of that or the maintenance of that, I think that's definitely something that we should.
I think it's a concern that it really should be assessed and the trial come to a completion, because at the moment, those eco reefs, unless there is a full-time consent for that and extension, they will be removed next year.
Thank you both. My questions were around the practical steps that we could take next, and then Alex very kindly came in and answered that in 3 very straightforward steps. So thank you both for your presentation.
Councillor.
No, just thanks, Tina. Appreciate the efforts that you went to and hosting a few weeks ago at Narwee. Brilliant presentation, and certainly took a lot on and have done today as well. So thanks, Tina.
Councillor Plummer.
Yeah, Alex, you'll probably know the answer to this, that the eco reef, it's a consent by the regional council.
Correct.
Has the regional council been out to speak to you guys about the extension of the eco reef?
That is a council and regional council on Waka Kotahi decision. So
But did they come out and speak to the community out there at all?
no,
Have you?
Adrian Staples was at the meeting, but that was mentioned.
but that's more governance rather than operations, and there needs to be that collaboration.
I understand that.
Yes,
Yeah, no, I was just interested to see whether they've come out to talk about what their future plans might be for it to you guys.
Is that an idea for that to happen?
I think
Sorry?
Was that a good idea for that to happen?
I would think it would be a very good idea to talk to them because they're a council that limiting council.
yeah, that needs to be driven by the CEO and the roading manager in discussions to reach a conclusion on the trial, and then the next steps. That's the process.
It wouldn't hurt to actually have them come out and speak to you anyway, but I agree with you.
Thank you, Councillor Fields.
Thanks, Mayor Martin. Alex, you talked about the eco reef trial. So that is a trial on, was it 3 or 4 specific sites?
2 specific sites. It was supposed to be 3, but time ran out on consultation with various.
And so there is an existing resource consent just for that trial?
Just for the trial.
Okay. And what was the time frame for the, when that process started before, from the time that application process started until it was approved, and then the work started to?
It was delayed 18 months by consultation, that famous word. And as a result, the time for evaluation of the effects has been shortened, but the consent only lasts through to 2024.
Right, okay. And ideally, what is the view of the committee down there and on where else should those eco reefs be installed?
I'm speaking on behalf without actually asking that specific.
Oh, okay, for yourself.
The intention right at the beginning was to assess whether or not it was effective on what is the worst coastline in New Zealand on Cook Strait, and then to extend the entire reef over any vulnerable areas that may cause erosion of road or historic sites.
Okay.
So it would be, you would probably want to look at upward of 20 kilometres of eco reef.
Right.
And there is an opportunity with the NZTA funding on climate coastal erosion, where that could be fully funded now if we were lobbying NZT, the Ministry to actually think a piece of that pie.
So if that consent expires at 2024, is the work that's been completed now, is that to be removed, the expiry of that consent?
Yeah, one would hope that there was an advance. This is why you need to have the resources in council to say, do we extend the trial where we make up a decision going next? The bold thing would be removing it if there's no such taking place.
Thank you, Councillor Bosley.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Hill, I'm still asked, one of the questions I was going to ask regarding, are they going to take that, the intention to take it out after all the work putting it in?
Yeah, but they're conditions of
You gave a figure of 85% of the road traffic out there is tourists. Is that sort of anecdotal or is there data that?
Anecdotal, but if you want to prove that otherwise you can, because the last time when we were given the special reserve status, a lot of work was put into manually sitting on the corner of Lake Ferry Turnal, taking all the number plates.
Yeah.
People have told me anecdotally,
Yeah.
and we have seen for ourselves that the amount of traffic on the road, it's not locals.
Yeah, those two are going to go, logging what we could take on it. Data is going to be fundamental to.
There is some data that you sent to me in here.
There's data, but there's also, look, from Wairarapa perspective, it's the total number. From a rating or council perspective, it's the number of residents.
Yeah, right.
And there's quite a difference in that. And there has been some research done which indicated 80 to 85. I think that's only changed over time. There's not much building going on, but tourism is increasing.
Yeah.
Also, to do that in another way would require credit card transactions to prove and then source where that came from, where it was registered. But we don't have any of that out there. It's all done. The land girl's the last possible place. And I did ask her for her information and she couldn't get it to me in that short time.
Councillor Maynard.
Hi. Hey, I was just wondering, I saw in your submission that you put that you would like to see the rural roading reserve increase to 500,000. Was that from all of the residents? Because I know you're at the Cape Palliser residents that it was put under, and so I just wanted to check that was increase the budget to 500,000 per annum. Is that?
I was just talking about what's been spent on the road in the last couple of years. So 500,000 was spent in maintenance and
Excuse me, Tina, on page, I think it's probably page 1 or 2 of your submission.
Yeah.
But there's a question, choose your preferred rural road reserve budget. And you have written increase the budget to 500,000 per year.
And I just wanted to check that was on behalf of the residents. So that was everyone felt like that.
No, I'm sorry, I'm not even sure why I wrote that.
I think that the indication may be not to reduce but maintain or increase, given the function that has occurred.
Right.
Yeah, it was never to reduce. It was to keep it the same, increase by this much or increase by that much, and so that's what I just wanted to get the feel, I guess, the appetite from the Cape Palliser residents, because that was who the submissions from. That it was actually from all of them to increase it to 500,000 was the appetite for the Cape Palliser residents group.
I think, Councillor Maynard, thank you for your question. Our stance would be that our submission that we put forward today is with regards to maintaining or to ensure that there is no degradation of the road any further.
Yeah, no, and I just wanted to also point out as well, Tracy, that it's really good to actually hear your figures for the last couple of years of how much work has been done on just normal maintenance, and then what the amount has been for emergency. And I'd say that with regards to the emergency in the last year had a lot to do with the cyclones coming through, and then just the massive weather bombs that were happening and affecting that. And I mean, I was really shocked actually at how that we got affected there in some of your roads. So we definitely know that there's an issue there, which is why this question was asked, and why it was so important just to get your feedback on it, on what the appetite is for your rural area.
And with regards to that, our cost was still a lot less than some of these roads.
Tina, Alex, thank you very much for coming in. That was a particularly valuable submission, and I'm sure councillors appreciate it very much. What we're going to do now is we're going to call an adjournment. We'll come back at 1:45, please, if that's all right. Tina, may I just ask you a quick question before you run away? Okay. Enjoy.
He could get around.
That's a difficult thing.
So thank you very much, Amy. The meeting is now being recorded. So if you make an off-colour joke, who knows where it will end up. So that's good. Now, I've just been reminded that I did not take a vote on apologies. We have an apology from Councillor Crawley. Do you have any others? I think we have one for an early departure. Is that correct? Councillor Elams.
Solely the lunchtime break.
Thank you. All in favour that we accept the apology? Please say aye. Aye, carried. Does anyone have a conflict of interest with anything that we're about to discuss? No. Thank you.
Yeah, I once again may need to take the odd phone call for work, so I may have to just stop.
Thank you. And it's possibly just worth saying again, because we've got new people here that we didn't have before, that the emergency exits are in the door that most of us come through and behind us. And if there is an alarm, please be outside in the children's playground. Now, next on our list is Scott Summerfield. We may be slightly too early. Can we check whether he's available?
I don't have a phone number for him. I've only got an email.
I emailed him when we were coming back into session and emailed him the link.
Right.
Expecting to come on in 4 minutes.
Yeah. I understand everybody has been asked to be fed earlier.
Thanks.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll just swap the order slightly, and we'll invite Richard Kershaw to come forward. So now Richard's submission is on page 41. And as I've said to others, Richard, assume that we have read it and therefore use your minutes to emphasise those things you really want to get home with.
Okay, no, thanks very much. Thanks for the opportunity. I've got the three main points I just want to speak to. Yeah, firstly, obviously the rural ratepayer. Yeah, I strongly oppose the proposed 11% increase to the urban ratepayers and the 29% increase to the rural ratepayers. I feel that we're all one community, and that there's nothing worse than central or local government coming out with these proposals that seem to turn policies overnight and that split and divide communities. We all live in South Wairarapa. We all need to work together to make this a better region to live in. Yes, we have major problems, and it's mainly our roading network and our town's water services, but all ratepayers benefit from these two main vital services. As a ratepayer, we have grandchildren attending the local Marlborough school, and it's essential that these water services are corrected. Likewise, we have family and friends and work-related services that use our rural roads. Reliable and safe roading is essential for all of our community. I've only got 3 points. And the second one is, we as a community in the South Wairarapa District Council, we need to prioritise what is a need to have and what is a nice to have. Like, I appreciate you're guided by central government, and it's important to provide, but it's important to provide the right decisions for our community. Like, for me, for us, I need to have a safe roading network, where our children can jump on a school bus and be transferred safely to their local school. We have all our community can drive on any rural road in the South Wairarapa District Council and feel safe. Where rural businesses are able to operate effectively, we are urban community are able to visit family and friends that live in the country. A nice to have is like a new dog pound that you just built over in Featherston. For 4 dogs, it costs 450,000. A need to have is a good, safe and healthy, reliable water infrastructure, whether it be drinking water, stormwater or wastewater. Marlborough again being a classic example of not having a good wastewater infrastructure, which has resulted in no more building permits being issued for the next 18 to 24 months. The flow and effect to all these tradespeople and the businesses that support these tradespeople is going to be immense.
a nice to have is like new office furniture. I don't want to pick on certain things that have been going on, but they cost 90,000 for health and safety. We just got to prioritise where we put our money. It just seems ridiculous the way things have been going. The third and finally, like the council, this is the bad judgment making, the inefficiency of how the rates have been spent. Road maintenance is nearly non-existent. Back in the winter of 1977, it's sort of show my age video, we experienced the worst weather possible. It was a shocking winter. We had a terrible run of wet weather, much worse than what we experienced last winter, resulting in numerous slips around the countryside. But I can't remember one rural road being closed. In those days, all the drains were cleaned out, culverts were maintained, slips had started to appear on the roads that were dealt with immediately. Gravel roads were graded regularly, potholes were dug out and filled in. But over the last few years, we've had next to no road maintenance, which has led to roads like Ruapakawatuna, Tuchamuri, White Rock, Nawi, and definitely the Hinakua Road being dangerous, in some cases unable to be driven on. The road, I don't want to get, I've got a lot of respect for Tim Lang. He does a lot of work out there for us, and but he's like a one-arm paper hanger at the moment. He seems to be stretched out. But there doesn't seem to be any sort of supervision. In most cases, we're waiting for the road to completely collapse before any action is taken. The Ponotai Road just north of the Hungerall Bridge here is a classic example. If the drains and culverts had been maintained, the water wouldn't have flowed across the road for the months that it did, which inevitably resulted in the road dropping out and the ratepayer was left to fork out for the major roadworks when it all could have been done with regular supervised maintenance had been carried on. So in the summary, that the council needs to go back to its ratepayers. Before the council goes back to its ratepayers to ask for more rate increases, they need to understand the difference. What is a need to have and what is a nice to have? For us personally, based on a 29% rate increase, we're going to have to find another $16,206. South Wairarapa District Council need to regain the confidence of their ratepayers. They need to show to have a better judgment making process. What's vital and what's not so vital, and spend the money where it needs to be spent, preferably water and roading. Once you can prove to the ratepayers that you've identified the need to fix these essentials and vital issues, and it's shown that they're connected in your long-term plan, then yes, come back to us, come back to the ratepayer and ask for more rate increases. But in the meantime, yeah, I'm a definite no when it comes to support for a proposed 29% rate increase.
Yes, thank you very much. Now, we'll open up to questions. And my first question is, did I hear you say what your rates were or what your rate?
And it's going up another 16,600. We were 55,000 and now we're going up to 70 something or other.
Okay, councillors, who would like to ask a question? Councillor Maynard, got her hand up. No.
I would actually, thank you, Richard, for presenting, and I think you raised a really interesting point about the fact that we are all one community, that the rural area, you know, has children that go to our local schools, and that it's really, really important that our water infrastructure is taken care of. I believe that was a concern yesterday, and so it's really good to hear from someone in the rural area how they feel with regards to maintaining and ensuring that there is a safe water network within our towns. So I just wanted to thank you very much for talking to that. I think that one point is really, really important. So thank you, Richard. It's always very good to hear from you, and I really appreciate you coming in today. Thanks.
Councillor Old.
Thanks for your presentation, Richard. And I'm sure you'll appreciate the requirements on council, for instance, from central government in terms, and you're in business and run a successful operation, and I'm sure that you're well aware of some of your requirements that you are expected to have in terms of meeting compliance for regional council and a whole raft of things. And it's because of this, of course, and certainly the construction of roading, the quality and standards of waters, of course, that we're forced into a situation, for instance, where we've got to maintain certain standards. So you'll appreciate that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I understand.
So it's not all vanity stuff. It's a case of actually meeting compliance.
Yeah. Somehow along the road, we've got to out back the central government. Look, we're going down the wrong path here. You know, the Hunakura Road's a classic, you know, $14 million to build a road. All those guys want is a bulldozer and a digger out there for a couple of days. They just want access. They just want to feel safe that they can actually get to town, that emergency services can actually get to them. They don't want an engineered road. They don't want it. I'm probably speaking out of turn here because I don't live out there, but we seem to have gone too far down this compliance road and things aren't getting done.
Thanks, Richard. Appreciate it.
I don't think there's any speaking out of turn, Richard. The floor is yours for another couple of minutes. Deputy Mayor has a question.
Good morning, Richard, and thank you for your presentation. You spoke very early on about the feeling of divisiveness between our communities that is created by the increases for urban versus the increase for rural. And I was just wondering if you were aware of the rating review that this council is currently undertaking with the view to make, or hopefully, things more equitable across the two rating components.
Sort of understand a little bit, like 70% of your ratepayers are rural, correct?
No, not 70%. I think the 30-70 split, correct me if I'm wrong, is based on the land,
Land mass.
value, and the land.
Value. So the actual monetary, who pays the most? Urban or rural?
I've always thought
That's just something I don't even know.
It's a very complex question because it to what you pay. So if you're not connected to water,
It's hard to compare like with like. So under the general rates that on which these three forms of rates that people pay, there's the general rate, there's the UAGC, and there's the UAC rate. And only under the general rate, sorry, I'm probably still to be correct, under the general rate, it's the 70-30 split, where 70% of the land value in the South Wairarapa is rural and 30% is urban. And so under that proportion is, but under the UAGC, every rateable property across the district is rated equally under the UAGC. And these different things which under UAGC, which different budget within the council are paid for, just like the general rate.
And just in case there are people who don't like acronyms, what Councillor Elam is referring to is a uniform rate where every ratepayer pays the same amount, as opposed to the general rate, which is based on the value of the land that you.
If I get back to the original question here, like I like to do things as a community. I hate seeing people segregated in different categorised in different areas.
Make a comment on that. I think there's a little bit of a misconception about how we set rates. So we don't set rates urban and rural. We've put that out there so that you as a rural person will understand what your rates are and what an urban person will. But when we set the rates, when we say we're going to spend X dollars as a council, it goes into the rating model and it splits it out against each rating unit. So we don't say we're going to target rural for a particular rate. It's how the model is set. The rating review will change how we split the pie. Okay, we don't have a pie for urban and a pie for rural. It's one pie, and the rules around how it is, all the money that we need to spend goes into the pie, and the rating review tells us how it gets split out. So we don't go, you're rural, we're going to bill you for this particularly. We don't look at that. Okay, so the rating review will allow us to have that conversation about how do we split the pie? Is it fair? And you make some very valid points. And that is what the rating review is there to do, is to say, have we got the pie splitting mechanism there?
If I was living out back of Hanakura, Tuchamiri, wherever, and I saw that letter come through, the 29% road increase compared to 11%, it's how you convey the message.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm sitting there thinking, Jesus Christ, the road stuff, I'm losing all these facilities and I'm expected to pay 29% more. It's how you portray the message, it's how you get the community on board. At the moment, putting what you've done out there is actually splitting them.
I completely acknowledge that, and the messages, how we present that message is really important. We have gone down this line over the last 3 years because that's what people asked and said, how is it going to affect me personally? So we've tried to give as much information to you personally. And of course, you do that, then it's going to create a perception of unfairness. So it is absolutely in the message, and it's a balancing act about how we present that message.
I have a question, Richie, which is most, or not most, a very large number of submitters from rural South Wairarapa have asked questions along the lines of, why do we have to pay for the water when we don't use it? And it turns out that somehow they're slightly mistaken, because they do not pay for the water. The only people who pay for the water services are those who are connected to it. Now, you are rather suggesting, I thought, that you think everybody should contribute to the water services.
Yeah, we didn't have water services in town. How's the school going to operate? Before Wharikaka tipped over, we all had relations going through there. Like, we all use the services in town. Body support, but we do it as one. That's what I want to bring across.
I would comment that in a better world, the school itself would pay a rate, but actually they don't. But that's a separate thing.
Hey, you got to look after youth. You got to encourage it.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. I appreciate your time. So the next person we're going to is Scott, who's going to come in by Zoom. And are you there, Scott?
Yeah, kia ora.
Excellent. Well, look, the next, we'll just do a little check. Scott's submission is number
168.
168, page 38. So Scott, the next 10 minutes are yours.
Ka pai, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Scott Summerfield tōku ingoa, he ori hau o Te Waipounamu, ko tangata tiriti hau, ko hinakura te kāinga, kia ora. I'll take my submission as read. Hopefully you have all had a chance to read it. I thought what I would do with this time is just walk through a couple of other examples to try and make the point I'm trying to get across around the Rural Road Reserve in particular, and then happy to answer any questions about the rest of the submission or about what I say this morning. Ka pai? Yeah.
Go for it. That way.
So I've talked obviously in the submission about Longbush Road and Cape Palliser Road as examples where I think the approach to the Rural Road Reserve is unfair and kind of almost irrational in terms of the benefit available. I thought I'd go through an experience I had. So I used to be the policy and planning manager at the Thames Coromandel District Council. And in the 2018 long-term plan, there was a proposal there that I just thought I'd walk you through the process up there to kind of give a comparable situation that I think applies here. So we had up there what were called unmaintained legal roads. So those were about 31 roads across the district where it was on a legal road reserve, which the council was the road controlling authority for. And the council had kind of by just turning a blind eye or not knowing that things were going on, those roads were formed over time in different ways. So, there's like a dog leg in Thames itself that had 4 houses coming off it. It was part of the formal road reserve. It had driveways off it, but it wasn't maintained by the council. Through to things like homemade bridges on never formed roads that were historically in place, but that a landowner had put something in place to kind of get there. So the council didn't undertake maintenance on those roads, but they had been formed by residents, so they were effectively available to the public. in that situation, the liability on those roads sits with council, and because use can't be restricted on those roads, they were publicly available assets. The proposal that council needed to make over that time then was a significant funding investment to bring those roads up to scratch all across the district, because they were available to the public to use as a whole, and they did have to be up to a certain standard. One of the options that was not put on the table, though, was targeted funding of the people who specifically benefited from those roads. And that was on the legal advice that was provided to council in House around kind of the, I guess, looking at the principles of the Rating Act that council needed to make a decision on around who benefited from those services, and the fact that, you know, they were available to the public, they were used by the public. There was no evidence to say who the user base was specifically, and there was no significant benefit able to be determined by people that live on it or certain users in certain places. So I think that the same principle kind of applies here, right? That where we have a roading network that is available to everyone, and unless you can determine that there is a significant benefit to a kind of determinable part of the community, it should be funded by everyone. So, you know, I've obviously talked about Cape Palliser, I've talked about Longbush. The other road that I think it'd be worth drawing attention to here is Ponatahi. And I mean, we all know what happens when the river comes up and we can't use the state highway to get from Martinborough to the rest of the district. We end up using the rural roads to be our lifeline around the place to get home, to get to work, to wherever we're going. But the burden of funding on that by the Rural Road Reserve is put onto a specific group of people that don't necessarily see the benefit, and there's no real reason for that. So I think that, I mean, I hopefully have walked through a few examples in that space, and you can see where I'm coming from when I say that this should be something that is funded by the community at large, not by the rural ratepayers, because there is no determinable benefit to rural ratepayers individually. And I guess the kind of the question that I have had through this process and have not really been able to get an answer on, and it has been hard to kind of try and find information about this, is where council was actually coming from in the first place when they said that 100% of this road reserve should be rural funded. And it would be good if anyone can answer that, because that kind of supports then the conversation going forward. Yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to add to my submission, but happy to have any conversation or answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks very much, Scott. That was very interesting and added some new perspectives, at least to some of us. Councillor Ealams has a question.
Thanks, Mayor Martin. Morena, Scott, thanks so much for your submission and your input. And it's great that it's coming from you as someone who's had experience in local government previously. Certainly you've got questions here about the Rural Roading Reserve and also the funding of rural roads. I think specifically that Rural Roading Reserve was set up a period of time ago, certainly before we came on board council. I think there has certainly in the last 6 months been a lot of discussion around how that Rural Roading Reserve should be funded. Probably also how roading full stop should be funded under the general rate. And since we came on board on council in October last year, we've had a number of meetings regarding the rating review to look at how rates are collected. And I think pretty much, I think right around the table, all council are keen to have got a view of having a look to see how that roading reserve should be funded going forward, and also how funding of roads under the general rate should be looked at going forward. So you raised some really great points. Thanks so much for that, Scott.
Now, I think Councillor Maynard has.
Kia ora, Scott. Thank you so much for your presentation. Really appreciate it. Yes, the Rural Roading Fund, I believe when I came on board, and perhaps Councillor Olds will be able to explain a little bit more, was set up by was brought to the table actually by Councillor Jepson from Ngāwi at the time, and it was because of the fact that Waka Kotahi or NZTA at the time was looking at reducing the amount of work funding that it was going to give to rural roads. So So as a rural ratepayer, he had a real concern, and that was where it started. I think both what you've said and from what we've heard from Richard is the fact that actually it's one community, right? It's and things like this do tend to make things very divisive. And the fact that we know as well that a lot of our rural roads are being driven because it's a part of our tourism. It's a selling point, and so we have, you know, and it benefits everybody. Not, you know, it absolutely benefits our urban as well as our rural ratepayers. You know, I think of like the Petuna Chasm and some of the rural businesses that have been able to be set up. So you know, it's about making it more cohesive as a community. That is one of the things that we are really trying to bear in mind as we come up to, you know, doing this rates review right from when it was put on the table. So I think I'd really appreciate all of the work, and it's great to hear from someone that has really good knowledge from an area that's similar. I guess, you know, like the Thames Coromandel, those small towns, lots of arterial roads. So it's quite nice to actually be able to hear directly from someone that has that knowledge. So thank you so much for coming on board and speaking to us today. Really, really appreciate it.
Right, Councillor Olds.
Can I just see Scott? Sorry, yeah, just terrible words. Thanks, Scott. Thanks for doing your presentation. Just a little bit about the Rural Roading Reserve, because prior to that, council adopting to target a rate for a Rural Roading Reserve, we didn't have anything in the bank at all. So if we had an emergency, obviously we had to call on some emergency funds. And Pip's absolutely right, because the FAR rate was being introduced into our roading networks across our roading, across our roads. So we had to look at some way of managing emergency events, and ultimately that's what it's set up for. And it built up, I think, to something like $1.5–2 million. And I have to say that it's been used extensively now to offset the impact on rates on some of the emergency work that we've had to carry out to keep those road corridors operational for our South Wairarapa community. So at the moment, I think the reserve's sitting at zero. I think it's all been used up. So hence the need for us to ask the community about whether or not we should be propping it up to a greater extent, so that these events are frequent now. Unfortunately, with climate change, we're seeing more and more of these events. So ultimately, they have to be paid for somehow. Thanks very much for your submission, for presenting any.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott, and great to hear from you.
Would I be able to just add a couple of extra reflections and just based on the councillor's comments, if that's okay? Have I still got time, or?
No, you've got a minute.
Perfect. So I've worked in local government for a decade, and this is the first time I've ever made a submission, and I'm always a little bit reluctant to do so because you folks tend to be the ones who pay people like me, and I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I'm someone who fundamentally knows about the cost of local government and how easy it is for communities to not appreciate those costs, and so I personally then don't really object to the funding that local government requires. What tends to exercise me is when there doesn't seem to be kind of a principled approach to fairness with that, and I think that's just what I'm seeing with the Rural Road Reserve here, right? I totally accept that it needs the funding available. It just seems inappropriate to ask a certain section of the community to pay for that on behalf of everyone, which is really the point I'm trying to get across here. It's something I think you can fix through this annual plan. If we think that it's kind of an injustice to the rural road ratepayers, and it doesn't need to be perpetuated here, it doesn't need to wait for a year. I agree that the Rural Road Reserve needs to be higher, given the types of kind of events that we're experiencing and what's coming down the pipeline as well. It's just about getting the who pays for that right, and making sure that the burden of that funding is fair.
Okay, thanks very much, Scott. I don't know if you heard, but there was some background applause there at one stage for your comments. So thank you very much. Okay, cool. So the next person is Lee Carter. Would you like to come and join us, Lee? So some people will know that Lee was on the council a wee while ago, so I take it this is a familiar environment for you, Lee. So the next 10 minutes are yours.
Not for about 4 years.
Right.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm going to speak pretty quickly because of time constraints and I've got a fair bit to say, which isn't unusual. Colin would tell you that. So I'd like to start with your statutory obligation of the Local Government Act in relation to section 95A, purpose and content of consultation document for annual plan. The council, in my opinion, have not met section 95A in its entirety, instead choosing to hide behind point 3 of section 95A, keeping information concise in a simple manner. The meaning of concise, giving a lot of information clearly and in a few words, brief but comprehensive. Your consultation document gave a lot of information in a lot of words, but was extremely brief on financial detail and lacked comprehension. In fact, it was nonsensical. Trying to make out sense of page 6 and 9 was mission impossible. The frequently asked questions on your website did not meet section 95A 3C, where the public could obtain further information relating to the content of the consultation document. This is because critical financial information appeared 3 weeks later. Yes, 3 weeks later after the public release of your document. Further information appeared erratically in a mixture of forms and not consistent with good practice of public consultation. The consultation period should have been extended since the ratepayers didn't get critical information for weeks later or repealed and started again. The drop-in sessions left a lot to be desired. Council staff and councillors, the ones who turned up, weren't able to confidently answer financial questions or fully explain the split between urban and rural on rating components such as the general rate and the UAGC. Concerning comments were made by council staff and councillors at the Featherston Greytown drop-in sessions, such as, in Featherston, I was told that the rural rates for the South Wairarapa is one of the lowest in New Zealand. This is also found on the facts page. This information has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on the 23-24 annual plan consultation and should have never been allowed. In fact, the statement made by council could be perceived as intentional, persuasive messaging communicated to the public to convince the people to change their attitude about the proposed rate increase so as to accept it. In Greytown, it was said that the CFO was on leave and leave had been approved way before the annual plan. The CFO's absence was clearly detrimental to the council throughout this consultation. I can't stress enough how critical it is to have the CFO present during any public financial consultation. The consultation document itself is poorly designed, poorly communicated and poorly articulated. It was full of financial gaps. Page 9, the proposed rate increases of 10% urban and 29% rural for the general rate didn't match the water reduction for urban. There was no detailed clarity around the proposed 45% increase in the UAGC, no explanation for the decreases of water charges and targeted rates. Page 6 had no reference back to the LTP comparing proposed rate increases, and it could be argued that this council are double and triple dipping with inflation. Not so long ago, a council could get away with a consultation of this calibre. However, we're in the midst of a global recession. Each cent of the ratepayers' spending is being closely scrutinised, noting that your popularity will deteriorate if you are not seen to be curbing council spending. The key message here I took from this council consultation document is that council was prepared to back the urban ratepayer while unfairly allowing the rural ratepayer to hang out to dry. In my opinion, a deliberate attempt to divide our communities. This council should be binding our communities together, setting an example of transparency, balanced and considerate rate increases, paying thoughtful attention to fiscal spending. Instead, this document demonstrates the lack of care you have as a council to me and other ratepayers. It was sloppy, lackadaisical and disorganised, essentially displaying an out of touch and out of control council with little concern of the community's ability to pay, affecting the financial and mental stability of our communities. On the flip side, I'm pretty thankful that you've published a document such as this, for it seriously has exposed you. This is supported by a comment from council, quote, that we are spending hours and hours answering questions. testament to the quality of the document you produced and released. With the little time that I have left, I'd like to focus on libraries, which is the second highest change in the UAG sheet here of over 500K. This here is the council organisational chart. Here you have 3 positions that say it's library. One of the boxes states that there's more than one person. This is actually misleading. An organisational chart is designed to highlight in all individual positions. Your consultation document here says that you have 10 full-time staff, which means your organisational chart should actually look like this for libraries. This would give you a total of 76 council staff and 28% increase of council staff since 2022. If you add the 3 extra staff, taking libraries to 13 staff that you're asking for this year, this takes you up to 79 council staff, an increase of 33% in the staff since last year. And this doesn't actually include the 13 shared staff people that you have at the bottom of your chart. So why is the libraries an extra 535,000 this year? The council says it's increased cost to run libraries largely due to ensuring all staff are remunerated for the living wage. If I'm not mistaken, the council announced some time back that they supported the living wage, and this would be reflected in the relevant council staff, which means the libraries are already on living wage. If you were to increase the living wage for librarians who aren't managers, they will get an extra $2.35 an hour in September 2023. That would bring the total cost of the budget for that area to $16,438.50. Add the unbudgeted $165,000 that was spent last year on 3 casual staff, another $165,000 this year on the casual staff you want to keep. We're at about $350,000. So what's costing libraries the extra $185,000? The critical questions to ponder is, why was $165,000 to be allowed to be spent unbudgeted last year? Why? Who approved the amount of the overspend? Who was overseeing the library's budget? And where's Carterton's contribution to this casual staff? 3 casual staff at $165,000 is $55,000 each. That's more than the living wage, which suggests the library staff are on more than the living wage. And let's not forget, we own the buildings that the libraries are in, so it's not like the rent's gone up. The fact that council staff couldn't explain what the $535,000 was at the Martinborough drop-in session is frankly frightening. Cost for libraries in the LTP year 3 is $1 million. We are not even at year 3 and we're at $1.5 million. That's a 51% increase from the LTP and 6% of our rate rise for this year. This is a good example of a council that is out of touch with public money and out of control spending. Tell me that there isn't something wrong here from what I've just explained to you around libraries. In conclusion, as stated earlier, the council's downfall of this consultation sits with the lack of regard and responsibility to meet your legal obligation to adhere to Section 95A in its entirety. And that is to provide effective, cohesive, detailed information for the public to be able to make an informed decision on such a significant rate rise, especially for the proposed rate increase of 29% rule. One could describe this consultation process, as a train wreck, with the only glimmer of hope being the ambulance in the form of a new CE, competent CE, who can come in and manage the executive team and their budgets.
Right, thank you, Lee. Well, we still have a couple of minutes, so we'll open up to questions from councillors. Now, I realise why Councillor Maynard often wants to ask a question and I can never see, because I think the little hand comes up about where boss's shoulder is. So it's not there at the moment, I think. So thank you. Councillor.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks. You've put a lot of thought and a lot of effort into your submission, as you always do, I might add. And you'll also be aware that the reason for these submissions is really to hear some of the facts that are coming forward to us from members of the public. And trust me, I take notes and all this. And you're also aware, of course, we have deliberations coming up. So while we can't answer some of your questions and now, we'll certainly raise it with officers during that deliberation phase so that we come up with a result that hopefully is acceptable to the community. So thanks for
Thanks.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Woodcock.
Thanks, coming Lee, and like Colin said, very thorough submission. I do believe some of the increase in the libraries, I could be mistaken, but there was some funding that's been dropped from government, which has put a bit of pressure on the library. So I know that's a part of it. So looking to where the whole number comes from.
Yeah, I mean, all the material that I have here today is just what council have told me. So I can only give you what you're telling me. And if there's extra information, that's really handy to have. But at a 4-week period, it's been very hard to actually get information from council in a timely manner, especially in the first 2 weeks, because I think it just been.
Oh, yeah. Poor Amanda and that have been under a fair bit of pressure. So, yeah.
And I recognise that.
Councillor Elams, then councillor Maynard.
Thanks, Mayor Martin. Lee, yeah, like what he said, pretty detailed and complex submission that you've spoken to. Thanks. You've certainly had experience both previously on community board and also on council. What process or how would you see that things could or should be or could be done differently?
I think there's a key thing that's I'm not sure how your process went, so I can only just gauge that these 2 documents here, they are actually quite excellent communicating documents to the public. In comparison to
what year are those?
That's last year's annual plan. And I think I'm focusing a lot on this type of stuff because you've got an LTP year coming up, and we cannot have something like this again. It'll drive you crazy, and it'll drive us crazy, and it'll create a lot of work for council. So I just suggest that maybe you take a good look at these documents and pick out what you think would be really good to communicate to the public. I think you really need to actually understand the consultation in Local Government Act for Annual Plan and LTP. So you're actually reflecting those things that they're asking you to do. Sure, you might not want to do all of them because it means a lot of work, but I think we're in a situation where there's a lot of money being spent. I'm asking questions on the simplest things. You've got big ticket items, and we have to have an LTP that reflects that people can connect well with the spending, with your decision making. And I'm actually really concerned about how much is being spent unbudgeted, because that means the next year we're all paying for it, you guys as well. I'd also strongly recommend using these graphs that were put out by Amanda later in the piece, and I think they were excellent, telling us the change in spend, really breaking down stuff, because that's, unfortunately for council, probably set off a lot of questions.
So going back to those graphs,
yeah.
But would it be beneficial to have the increase on the budget this year alongside what the budget was the previous year as well, so that people could
the comparisons? But I know that this is pretty much out of date, but legally you still have to go back to it and then explain the reasons why there's been a blowout here. I mean, if we're always paying for roads, tell us we are paying for roads. This is how much it's cost. Don't tell us all about what has happened in the past. Tell us what you're doing in the future and what those costs need to be. I mean, yesterday you had a meeting where you've got to find $1 million. Why hasn't that been planned into Wellington Water and that? But that's another story. But just, we're getting to the point where we actually got to know what the heck is being spent here, because our money we just can't keep going on with high.
Excuse me, Lee, I'd like councillor Maynard to get her question in.
Kia ora, Lee. I love the look on your face. It's just like old times. Oh, sorry, but no. I'll let you say something. I actually, my question was something that you said that I just was a bit confused, and you said that it seems that there's a double or even triple dipping on inflation.
Yeah.
That you're looking at. Do you mean as an excuse or
no, I mean, on page 6, we've got inflation increases, but it could be argued that insurance costs inflation, and also in other costs, the development related fees, valuation and audit fees. So you've got them separated out, which actually brings your amount that you need up. But essentially, some of those are probably already sitting in inflation or could be inflation. We are for one portion, but you've spread it out into 3 portions. Make sense?
Oh, I see. I see what you mean. So it looks like we're counting it over and over again.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
no, thank you for that.
I don't know those reasons. I'm just pointing it out.
So we'll take a
No,
last.
thank you.
We'll take a last question from Councillor Plymouth, please.
Yeah, hi Lee.
Hi.
Always enjoy your presentation.
Sorry.
That's quite all right. Hey, you ticked the 4.9 million on the water thing, which is an increase from the long-term plan.
Yeah.
You can make a comment on that and you understand.
Say that again.
You ticked the increase of the budget to 4.9 million for water, for the 3 water spend on your submission.
Oh, yes.
So you want to make a comment on, obviously you understand what that'll mean for a rates increase in the urban environment. On the urban?
Yeah. So my thinking was we can't have 3.5 because that'll get you nothing, and the poor ratepayers that will may have a bill from that for the next year. So I wanted to do middle ground for the people who are paying for water. So they had money to do the services and some other money to do the critical stuff, and something come up, and that was just my rationale. I didn't. It was more about having the money, but also conscious of how much pay people will be paying in addition to the 11%. So I had to weigh that up.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Now, the next person on our list is Robert Carter, and spot him in the audience.
So Robert's not here.
Right.
He was supposed to be, but he's not very comfortable with reading out his submission, so he's asked if I can read it out for him.
Okay.
It's not a long submission, and it's much kinder.
Okay, go for it. Kind of. Oh, no.
Hi there all. Thanks for letting me speak through my wife. Look, I'm not happy about the rural rate rise of 29%. I don't know anyone that is, and that shouldn't come as a surprise to you. It does bother me that it seems so easy for you guys to put out to the public, we need $3 million more for this year to run our business. I'd like to wake up in the morning and say, hey, I need $3 million more to run my business, and I'm just going to enforce it on the ratepayer, collect my money while passing go, and carry on my merry way. 29% is getting up there. That's quite a hike for a one-off hit, and trust me, it's going to hit hard for many rural ratepayers. I'm in the agricultural contracting business, and the hit will have a ripple effect, no doubt about it. I still can't quite get my head around how you thought it was okay to consult on a rate rise that high in one hit, especially with the Greater Wellington Regional Council also predicting a hit of 18% increase. Page 8 of the consultation document tells the ratepayer that we pay what we pay for out of every $100 of our total rates income. For most of rural, you'll see that the top line isn't really relevant. So this page only really applies to urban. And since there's a rate rise difference for urban and rural, why didn't you have a chart for rural telling us what we're paying for out of our every $100 of rate income? So I believe page 8 is not accurate based on services provided to rural. Speaking of who is paying for what, I see that the new dog pound was opened the other day at the cost of $450K. I also noticed that animal control actually wasn't on page 8, or doesn't it matter because rural pay 100% of the costs and that page isn't about rural, it seems to be about urban. How many dogs have you had in the pound over the last 5 years that are rural? Interesting that animal control is the second highest rate increase to roading on the general rate. Both areas where rural pay more than urban for dogs and roading. And the general rate, it's not an equal split of 70-30 because 100% on the general rate is for animal control paid by rural. I would also like to say that roading is one of the reasons why rural rates are on the rise. I recognise that. But I would argue that rural roads are being used by so many urbanites these days that to justify that rural pay for rural roads is a thing of the past. Many using the back roads to Marsden because of the road works, Poor Walk and the coastline, a massive attraction to tourists. Same with Ngāwī, campers, trampers, surfies, fishers, boaties, Kawa Walk. Council need to get with the times. These roads are not just about rural anymore. It's also interesting that in the building costs, the highest charge in the UAGC graph is 550K up. With the Martinborough wastewater disaster, you won't be getting many consents in for Martinborough for a while. A good cost reduction in staff there, I would have thought. Finally, I had to endure a month of intense BS because of this consultation document. The bloody phone had been ringing off the hook, messages pinging away on Facebook, people stopping to talk about the rate rise. The wife's been off to meetings about the rate rise. I had to cook my own dinners, listen to this stuff, the fallout around page 6 and page 9, page 6 and page 9, and so on and so on. The only light relief I got through the whole month of May was that Harry Wilson resigned. I've not seen the wife so happy since Ardern resigned. Anyway, I don't support your proposed rate rise of 29%, especially all in the one go. You do need to stick within your budget like ratepayers do, and many people are forced to stick to their budgets. We're not all an endless pit of money, and we shouldn't be looked upon as easy money to collect on the way past go. I'm sorry, I'm not here to answer any questions because I'm no good at that stuff. I just wanted to have my say.
Well, look, thank you, Robert, and you have had your say, and we enjoyed listening to your voice piece. And thank you very much, Lee.
Thank you. Thank you, your work.
Thank you, Lynn.
That's good. Thank you. So,
Robert, thanks.
the next person on the list is Jay Peel via Zoom. Are they there?
Yeah.
They're not. Okay. Then we come over to Ben and Georgie Lutons, if they're here. Hutchins. Greetings. Come forward. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. We'll make the assumption that people have in fact read your submission, which is on 55 to 57 councillors, and we invite you to talk to us for the next 10 minutes.
Okay, we all know that the rate's going up, but this is a personal one to where we live. We are north of White Rock Station, South Station, and you know we, as you know, our rates have gone up hugely. The last 2 years, only 2 years ago, you put them up 28%. That was another 7,000. If you put them up another 29%, that's another 10,000. So we are paying an extra $17,000 for what? We know there's a road. We have a 15-kilometre gravel road to our home, but that's it. Riversdale is a large station, but it's not all farmable. There's no money in honey, There's no money. Farming is decreasing, not increasing. Our profits are decreasing. We cannot keep going. We're paying these huge rates for nothing. So I just hope you'll listen. Please look at this map of our farm and you can see how much of it is actually covered in bush or rivers. We are not making an income from that. Okay, the farm as a business is paying company tax, income tax, and collecting GST for central government. The huge amounts of rates we pay is in fact paying twice for the sole service providing the district council of road maintenance. Okay, we can't keep going paying these huge rates. We don't get rubbish, we don't get anything. And as you know, that's with all so many rural homes. So Riversdale's been in Ben's family for nearly 200 years, and we want to pass it down to another generation. Well, perhaps if the costs keep going up, we won't be able to. Like a lot of farms, they'll just be sold. What? Our farm can't be planted in pines, it's bush. Canuka, bush. Big riverbeds, the income is limited. So that's basically what I'm saying. Just hear what we're saying. And we have nothing to do with the Martinborough here. I know you've got expenses to do filter, etc., but what do we gain from it?
Okay, thank you. White Rock Station, I'm a half owner right on the coast. So this 29% increase in rates is all around inflated land values because of carbon subsidies. How do we in the real economy fight this imaginary economy of carbon subsidies? And you're probably aware the last carbon auction, there were no bids and the log market has crashed recently. I've been logging trees, my North Wairarapa property since 1994. I'm pretty aware of the ups and downs. China is now self-sufficient in logs. That's where most of our export logs go to. So farm inflation, because of poor management of the national economy, 27% in the last 2 years. China, 1% per year. And that's the market we're selling into. So exporters are the most exposed to all these cost increases that are happening domestically. We're going to lose money this year at White Rock. We've had a good year physically, great crop of land, but we're actually going to lose money. This is the first time in 10 years. So we have to reduce our costs. It's the only way to survive. Fewer people on farm, etc. Now, you're probably aware of the sale of Birchill Station, for example. That sold for about $6.5 million above what the next bidder for a farm was willing to pay, $6.5 million. And all that's got transferred into this 29% increase in rate. I'm not sure if you're worried about Birchill, but there was mooted an irrigation dam there. Now it's going to be covered with pine trees. Is that a good idea for the South Wairarapa District Council in terms of development of the region? Windmills, I don't know if you passed through Haunori recently, but there's only one turning. That's why they're called renewables. You have to renew them so often. A couple other points, banded dotterels. We've got a big population in our riverbeds. They're now on social welfare because although there's a good population and they've lasted there for 180 years, now we've got biodiversity officers of the regional council and they need an excuse for their existence. So $48,000 was spent on a trapping program. Now, I really don't know whether that's going to do anything or not. You're also involved, aren't you, George, in that riverbed? So Consultants, bureaucrats, beneficiaries, we have a real problem in the national economy, as you're aware, and of course, the South Wairarapa District Council has to handle all the inflation as well. I'm going to leave you with a little story. Guy Farman, farm in Turkington, logging to the lower North Island. They've had up to 26 logging gangs. They're down 21. I just spoke to Guy this morning. He was running a sawmill for Carter Holt at Tokoroa. This would be about 17 years ago. And he used to go to head office in Auckland and write a report. Every 2 weeks he was required to do that. There were about 200 in head office. And then Graham Hart bought Carter Holt. 3 months later, he went to head office. There were 3 people there. That's the sort of thing that needs to happen in the New Zealand economy to stop the march to poverty that we're all facing. We're going down a black hole. So in conclusion, it'd be great if South Wairarapa District Council could take a lead by example and actually show that they can reduce their cost as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And why are you putting them up 29%? What about 8% for inflation?
Any questions to our guests? Councillor, yeah.
Thanks, Georgie and Derek, for coming along and speaking. Georgie, what size property is Riversdale?
It's 10,500 acres.
5,000 acres. And you said, I'll use my notes, was it 15 Ks of road to go through?
Yeah.
Centre. And you're out of the meeting at Tuchamuri a few weeks ago, where we spoke to where council and council staff came and spoke to the community, and the sentiment there was from the community about the roading costs and the roading maintenance, and how much was carried out and what needed to be carried out going forward, and it was certainly taken on board by the councillors and the staff who were present. And certainly the message is coming through to the councillors at this table who went to that meeting, that work needs to be revisited going forward. But yeah, certainly I know those rates increases are looking at a lot of people are hurting. Certainly there was discussion around the council table when they were considering and doing the workshops about the rate levels.
And when there is problems, we go out with a chainsaw and open road. We don't ring up whoever.
But then when there are big problems and it's more than just a tractor to clear and open the road, I mean, yeah, the council, we are getting out there, but it might not be as fast as what you would like, but we do get out there to open those roads.
But so do we help.
Yeah, yeah, appreciate it. Yeah.
I have to say, some years ago, over our cattle stock, we have tar seal. Okay, we rang up the engineer, this was a female at the office, and she came out of an afternoon. She had an hour at our house, wasting our time, her time. She said, leaving. Oh, by the way, I'm leaving in 2 weeks, and nothing was done. She didn't write a report, nothing. So I feel that's not only her waste of time, council waste of time, it was our waste of time. Well, I think that was disgraceful of her. To come all that way, she spent an afternoon out of the office and nothing ever was done.
I had a little story, the river that goes past the White Rock buildings changed course and went out by the rock, took out a whole bank where it had effectively a boundary fence. And we went to the regional council and said, look, we're prepared to spend the money to fix it. Reckon it'll cost about $3,000 just to reinstate what was there. Oh no, you'll need 6 consents. No, it costs $6,000. This is the sort of thing we're facing. I mean, we're sick of it.
Yes, thanks very much. Councillor Woodcock.
Hey, Derek and Georgie, thanks for coming along. Completely agree with you there, Derek, these consents. So I actually had a phone call this morning about more ridiculous things like the regional council are doing to basically waste money and make things a lot harder for people and things to get done. And I know for a fact there's people inside the regional council that are worried about what is or isn't being done on rivers, etc., which is going to become a huge problem down the track. Yeah, so fully on board with helping out where we can there. But as far as your rates go out there, of understand where you guys get huge rates when you've got huge land values. We are going through the rating review process to hopefully make things a little bit fairer for everyone. It just takes a little while to go through, a few months to go through the processes, especially as new council coming in and starting that process already. So hopefully we can help out.
Okay, well, look, thank you very much. And we will certainly take your submission and your oral submission on board. And subsequently, we will let you know what we have decided. So thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Georgie, the next person on the list, Frank Aldrich, and he's coming in by Zoom, but I don't think he's there, is he, Amy?
No, he's done.
But I do notice Jim Headley in the back, and I wonder if he would be willing to give his submission now.
As long as I can have all this work.
Of course. So welcome, Jim. You're an old friend at these surroundings, so please take a seat and the next 10 minutes is yours.
Bugger when you get old.
I've noticed.
I thought it's only me. As I stated, the annual plan should be transparent. The 2023 annual plan frequently asked questions, FAQ, is a debacle. The answers are confusing and lack clarity, mixing general rate with targeted rate when answering a question. The best one is, what are the drivers for the 29% increase in the rural general rate? What is impacting these increases specifically for rural properties? The question is about the general rate, but go on to say that urban was at a similar level to rural before council applied the cost reduction, the reduction of water operating budget, and pausing water loan repayment. What's water got to do with the general rate? Water is funded by a targeted rate. All that does is confuse ratepayers and does not answer the question. Even when answering a question, it opens up more questions. In the frequently asked questions, how does the 15.9% increase fit with 11% urban rate increase and 29% rate rural rate increase? It states that this allocation is done using a rating model. I received what council said was the rating model, it's a copy of it there, and nowhere does it show that footpaths are funded out of urban's 30% of land transport, out of land transport, and the same for the rural road reserve out of rural's 70%. And nowhere does it show it in the annual plan documentation. It's amazing what we've learnt from this exercise. The main thing is council will do anything to keep urban rates low. In my submission, I showed each function that is funded by the general rate. This was based on the information I received from council at the start of the previous council. I enclosed a copy of the reply, and that was before the present valuation, which saw land values split 25% urban, 75% rural. There's a copy of that there for you.
It shows that 48% of governance not funded by the UAGC was paid by the general rate on land value. 40% urban, 60% rural. This has now been changed to 25% urban, 75% rural in the proposed annual plan. Of the 48%, 12% urban, 36% rural. Now, that's of the, if you, 48%, right? So it should be, if it's done on land value splits of 70-30, should be 14.4 urban and 33.6 for rural. Council, community board, committees, it's on the graph there, is 21,737 urban, 65,210 rural. And the policy and governance is 21,656 urban and 64,969 rural. Both are 25% urban and 75% rural. Why? Even though the land value split is now just over 30% urban and just under 70% rural. There is no justification for a 25%, 75% split for the 48% of governance funded by the general rate. Council have some options. This is a function that benefit the people of the district. One, fund it by the general rate, but use the differential created by the 52% paid by a UAGC, which would see 52% urban, 48% rural, as that is about the rateable property split that UAGCs are based on, and would make it more consistent with the 52% funded by the UAGC. Better still, by a UAC, differential based on the population split, which is about 66% urban, 34% rural. Three, lift the UAGC part to fully fund the 30% allowed at present, at 26%. The only reason it's not all funded by a UAGC is that when John Reid was mayor, it was decided to use the full 30% allowed, and that is where they ran out of the 30%. Then there's the funding of footpaths. It's good that council see that this is an urban function and should be funded by urban. The way council have gone about funding footpaths is wrong. Footpaths should be funded as a separate function along with street lights, street cleaning, curb and channeling, etc. To do so would make it transparent. To keep urban rates low, council have decided to use some creative accounting and say that footpaths are funded out of the 30% urban pay for their share of the land transport budget. If it's to be done that way, then it should be on top of their 30%. There is no difference between that and what was used previously, 30% urban, 70% rural. The same amount of money is raised and spent. The only thing it does is make councillors feel good about themselves, that they are doing the right thing. It's like the story about the emperor with no clothes. It should be remembered that rural still pays 70% of urban roads, and also from the time of John Reid to now, rural has paid between 75 and 80% of urban streets, tar sealing, urban streets, tar sealed, and most footpaths on one side of the street. By using creative accounting and change of language, urban pay for footpaths out of their 30%. Council seized on this opportunity to keep urban rates low by saying that council is pausing expenditure on new footpaths, saving 205,000. And that will come off urban's general rate. Under proper accounting, it would go to fund other roading costs or come off the rates of both urban 30%, rural 70%. By using their creative accounting, urban take more out of their 30%, another 140,000 for footpath renewal and 25,000 for footpath maintenance. So out of the 714,000 increase in the land transport budget, urban's 30% is 214,000. Take off the 205,000, the 140,000 and the 25,000. That totals up to a minus 155,600 total. Urban contribution for increase in the land transport budget to go to roads is minus 155,600. Going by the council's graph, changes to the general rate, land transport, it shows urban 32,972, 6.5%. Rural 468,477, 93.5%. This is unacceptable. Now that rural roads need some major expenditure, council run for the hills and use creative accounting and change of language to protect urban from the higher costs to fix rural roads. Rural have to use money only rural ratepayers have paid into the rural road reserve to fix rural roads, which both urban and rural use. The long-term plan was to have 1 kilometre of rural road sealed extension per year. This has been stopped, so rural are entitled to have their contribution to the land transport budget reduced by 500,000 plus per year. As it's good enough for urban, it's good enough for rural. This is all happening because of council's creative accounting. Would not happen if footpaths, etc., were funded in a separate function.
Thank you, Jim. So
I've got out of time, haven't I?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we ask me questions on that and I'll carry on with.
We've got some choices. How long is Pauline's submission going to take you to read?
I've got 4 pages.
Okay, so we'll do that and then we'll go to questions for.
Okay, good.
Go for it.
Rural road reserve, this is paid on top of rural 70% of roading budget. This shows.
Is this Pauline's submission?
Yeah. This shows the hypocritical. You can read.
I know what you mean.
Hypocritical and double standards. Taking footpaths out of urban's 30%, low priority, nice to have. Rural road reserve on top of rural 70%, high priority, must have. It should be a road reserve paid in by both urban and rural, and both urban and rural use rural roads. And roads should now be seen as a community asset. And if urban want to share in the economic benefit that rural bring to the district, the urban need to start investing in rural roads instead of taking money out. Rural can do without urban. It was the wine industry that brought Martinborough back from the dead. The wine industry rural in Martinborough can do without Martinborough urban, but Martinborough urban would be another death of urban without the rural wine industry. That is not to say that both are not better with each other. Funding of footpaths out of urban 30%, reducing urban general rate by 205,000, causing new footpaths, rural road reserve paid by rural on top of 70%, the 48% of governance paid 25%, 75% rural have been done without notification or consultation with ratepayers and the public, and has been kept secret until now. I say the above changes have been done illegally because council have not followed the correct process. to make changes of this nature, council does not have the right to change things at a whim to suit themselves. In the FAQ, it states that 22, the Taxpayers Union found that South Wairarapa rural rates were almost the lowest in the country, 63 out of 66. This has nothing to do with the annual plan delay. It is just a red herring. In the councils, have your say on page 23, it says, contact your elected member. So I emailed all councillors with the question that the proposal showed a 10% increase for urban and 29% increase for rural and the general rate, in the general rate. What was your reason that justified you voting for this? 4 councillors replied, of which 2 would reply later, but none did. One did not see it, and one gave an answer but did not answer the question. The rest obviously voted on it, not knowing what they were voting on. A major worry. Animal control and bylaws. I have tried to find out what this function covers from council, but still now have received nothing. There is nothing in the FAQ except that it's 100% funded by rural and could be reconsidered in the rating review. The graph for changes in general rate, it shows an increase for animal control of $275,601. No explanation what this being spent on. On page 8 of the annual plan consultation shows that every $100 of total rates income council is proposing to spend. There is nothing about animal control yet. On the graph, changes for the general rate, animal control and bylaws is the biggest, only after land transport. So the only thing I have to go by is the animal control bylaws, which show that animals that come under the animal control function. They are 1, the Wairarapa Consolidated Bylaw 2019, Part 6, keeping of animals, poultry and bees. Part 6 outlines requirements for keeping animals, poultry and bees in order to protect neighbours and property owners. And by the bylaw covers all animals, birds, poultry, bees. Most of the rules are to do with the urban area, so they don't cause a nuisance, noise or odour or create a danger to public health. Examples: no pigs to be kept in the urban area, no roosters to be kept in the urban area, no person shall keep in an urban area noisy animal which causes a nuisance to residents in the neighbourhood. These rules are in place for urban because of the close proximity of dwellings. In the rural, there are larger distances between dwellings. Then there's the South Wairarapa Control for Dogs Bylaw 2013. This for the control of dogs, mainly in urban public areas. Most of the work involves dogs in urban areas, again, because of the closeness of dwellings. Then there is the expenditure of some 450,000 on a new dog pound. As I understand, it's just a couple of containers. To me, it just shows council getting lack of value for money. There is no justification for rural funding animal control and bylaws 100%. It's more like it should be funded 100% urban. To me, it looks like another way council is keeping urban rates low. It's good to see council is using UACs to fund amenities, but the differential needs to be increased from 70 urban, 30% rural to 75% urban, 25% rural. The reason for the differential is because rural have and fund their own. The amenities are for the people of the district, and the population split is about 66% urban, 34% rural. So under the 70-30 split, it's not far off the population split. So not much of a discount for having and funding their own. So some of the spending looks out of control. E.g. toilets, 100,000. More functions should be funded by a UAC, sorry, it should have been a UAC, where they benefit the people of the district, which with a differential based on the population split between urban and rural. The 45% increase in function funded by UAGCs just show how much council is out of control. The 45% is well above the rate of inflation. It's about time council lived within its means. It just shows council is not accountable to the ratepayers because it knows if it goes over budget, it just ups the rates. Council perhaps needs to look at its staffing numbers. Council must be the biggest employer in the district, overflowing council offices and taking out offices across the road and also in Greytown. An increase of this magnitude is unacceptable. Most of those functions are for the benefit of the people of the district, funding them by a UAGC, these rural, paying about 48%, but only has about 34% of the population. An example is cemeteries. Rural have to die 1.5 times compared to urban's 3/4 to get the benefit they pay for. The loan of 1.5 million taken out to lower rates about 2 years ago, the repayments are being paid by UAGC, which sees rural pay 48% when most of the extra expenditure was for urban water and sewage. It is no wonder that the CEO resigned. He didn't want to be held accountable for this mess. Last page. As I stated, the annual, that's the first page.
But we have a minute left. If anybody has a question, we'll take it now. Frank is waiting on Zoom, so we're keen to get to him quickly. Thank you, Councillor Ross.
No, thanks, Jim. Thanks for the depth of detail you've gone into with this. As you know, we've got deliberations coming up after this, and I'm convinced that a lot of what you've said today will be considered during that deliberation process. We are going through a rating review. You will be aware of that. And there's a lot of work being done following this process to work on that. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Each one has a copy of what I've said and the documents I refer to.
Yep. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Appreciate seeing you again. Now, Frank, can you hear us?
Yeah, sure can.
Brilliant. And we can see you, so welcome. And the next 10 minutes are yours.
Excellent. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, council staff. I can see some of you sitting there.
Thank you.
I'll try and keep it brief. I'm going on the assumption you've read my submission, but I will summarise, and I guess the submission is prefaced with, I know you guys are between a rock and a hard place. Most of my work is for councils around the country. A lot of you know that, and a number of you councillors personally. You know, I've worked for 58 of them, so I know some of the pressures that you're under. And what I'm seeing is, I guess, a road that I live on, and you know, I lived out here from when I was 17, so 43 years ago. It's had a big change in use, so the pressures on this road have just got harder and harder over the years. So, but what we did put up some submissions back in 2019, and there was a commitment from the council to seal the first 3 kilometres. COVID got in the way of some of that, but they did seal from kilometre 2 to kilometre 3, from 1 to 2. And that's been a huge improvement, so we appreciate that. But I don't know if you've seen the video. Happy to share it if you like. And I think the video sort of talks to it better than I can, but it's got pretty unsafe. There's part of the change of use is Partuna Chasm. They have 9,000 visitors a year now. So that's about 3,000 cars, and about 2,950 of those are probably people that don't normally drive on a gravel road. So you know, I know Waka Kotahi have standards around gravel roads. If you're having to deviate off the centre of the road to dodge potholes, you know, I think the limit is about 4 per kilometre. You know, I can show you a bit of video clip. We've probably got about, you know, 404 in that first kilometre. So it just makes it unsafe. There is one area in particular where I think there should be a barrier. It's just above Rex Thomas's place. And that's where there's about a probably close to 80-metre cliff. We've had, you know, young kids tangled up in the trees on their way to a party. You know, if they'd been a couple of metres further back, they'd have been plummeting over an 80-metre cliff. So a very different outcome. So it's unsafe. The safety's on you guys now. You know, I guess we've put you on notice. And what I would like to see is that the commitment that was made originally to seal it to 3 kilometres was reneged on last year. And I know there was budget pressure for that. But the thing is, you're spending the money on this road. That's the bad point, is that you're spending money and it's just not being spent effectively. I could show you where originally it was formed up quite well a few years ago, when I think when Fulton Hogan took the contract over, but it just hasn't been maintained. So quite recently we've had it all re-gravelled, that first couple of kilometres, to no effect. You know, it's only probably 2 days before that's all eroded back over into the drains. And about a week or so ago it was graded, and yet I came home that night and there was still potholes, well, you know, at least one right in the smack in the middle of the road about the size of a rugby ball. So you've just spent all that dough to no effect, really. Within about probably 2 or 3 days, that grading is basically eroded back to corrugations. So some of the corrugations are bad enough they put you off course. Some of them are bad enough that they bring you into the car coming around the corner the other way. So that's a real issue here. So I'm just proposing that you do it once, you do it right. Sealing would, I know, cost you, but it would be a lot of preventative maintenance going forward. It's probably enough for me to say. I don't know if you've seen the video. I know some of you have. I've spoken to a councillor, but is that worth sharing, Your Worship, or?
Go for it.
Righto, we'll see how I go, eh? Okay.
I could have a few heads out of the way here.
We're not
You might. Oh, no, here we go. All right. Tell me when you see it.
Yep.
Thanks, fellas. Cheers.
Do we have the commentary for the video?
You hearing it?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Not from the video though.
Oh,
Oh, righto.
It's giving a pretty good visual representation.
Yeah.
Frank.
So what you're seeing there is water on the side of the road, councillors. You can see the potholes. You're actually seeing a bit here where the seal's broken right through to the clay. This part coming up. That's slush. So I'm probably doing 60 kilometres an hour here. So one of the solutions was to lower the speed limit to 80 Ks. If you could do 80 Ks along here, you're doing pretty well, really. So it's a bit of dodge the pothole. I did do another bit of video clip. And here's your new sealed bit. This is between kilometre 2 and kilometre 3. So, sorry, 1 and 2. I guess you see it, eh? That's about as bad as it gets. And you know, I guess the bit that I'm disappointed to say is, you know, I work all over the country. I work in regional councils from you know, Southland District Council right up to, I'm working with Far North District Council next week. And that's probably the roughest bit of road I drive on. it's the last 3 kilometres to home. So that's about me, really. So I'll hand over to you, councillors.
Okay, thanks very much. So we've got about 4 minutes left. So we'll start with Councillor Maynard, who's also on Zoom. So you probably won't see her, but Councillor Maynard, go for it.
Yeah, I won't put my camera on because I'll probably scare everyone. But thank you so much, Frank. And you know, I really, really believe that this is an area of road that was, you know, that really needs to be looked at, having that tar seal put on, because the ceiling was taken away, and they said that there'd still be maintenance, but there's you know, that just goes to show the absolute poor approach that's going into this area, and how much we spend on there getting someone out to grade it that lasts for about maybe 24 hours. You know, this is it's just throwing you know, money, you know, like poor money into one after the other, and which is stupid, and not using our brains to actually do things the right way. Everything we do, because it's ratepayers' money, we, you know, so having something that we can, as council, for any of us that might not have been able to travel that road before, to actually be able to see how poor it is and how much of a difference it made by having that other part sealed. Like just those last couple of seconds when you hit the seal, it's a you know, completely different. So I mean, that's really something that as a council we have to think about when it comes to that part of our rural road. It wasn't a big ask. It was 3 Ks, 1 K was done, and the rest hasn't been done. And it's just, and yet I'd be really interested to know how much money has gone into just doing the rest of that road since it was pulled, because it's probably going to be more than what it would have cost to have gotten it sealed in the first place. So I really appreciate the visuals there as well. Thank you so much, Frank.
Councillor Olds.
No, thanks for your presentation, Frank. I have to say it's not the first time I've heard a presentation about the state of Ruakaka-Paterna Road. Over the years, I think since about 2014, we've had various people, lobbyists for some work to be carried out on that road. And I must admit, council used to have a policy of sealing so many Ks of road a year. Is it 1 K a year? And that was back when I think to do a kilometre of road was about $100,000. It's now about $400,000 to seal 1 kilometre of road. But I completely understand your frustrations, because there were some promises made that weren't able to be delivered on, obviously. And I think it needs to perhaps come to the table again. And I'm pleased that you brought it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Councillor Woodcock.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Frank. Very good. Love the video. I fully understand what you're talking about with the chasms. I've been there. Great place. Huge amount of people. You've also got glamping up your road. Probably brings in quite a few tourists as well. I'm not sure how many people use the lodge up the end of that these days, how much traffic that attracts, but yeah, obviously these roads were never designed that much traffic. I'm sort of on a mixed bag with the sealing of road, but in your case, I think that particular road is probably one that should be done. As far as your grading and that goes, I personally think the issues we've had for years since they took away local, the local county council workers and that, they've lost a lot of knowledge for how to look after these roads. Like a true grader driver, those haunchings should be taken off in the summer when they blow to dust, which lets the water get off the road. Roads can't just be graded, they have to be potholed first. And these are the things through different reasoning, some of it's health and safety and costs of traffic management and whatnot have sort of disappeared over the years, which is a bit of a concern.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Now we've come to the end of the morning session. So we will adjourn and we will resume at 1 o'clock, please.
Thank you,
everybody.
You're very welcome. Thanks, councillors. Thank you, staff.
These are 25 by 12, is he? Are we on time?
Yeah, just